All of them are automatic.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm old school on that. Hey, I was going to show you this picture I got. That's me and Dr. Lowry.
Let's see if that looks like you. Yeah.
Pretty close,
I think
isn't
it's pretty
it?
close.
Yeah.
This was like your son.
Well, I wouldn't go far. Look at this.
Is that when
I
you
greatly admire you.
Is that when he helped you helped him with the building?
Yeah, you were one of the first speakers there.
Yeah. Do you know the story behind me obtaining that building, which is very unusual?
I
think most of the folks in town.
He had already passed away, right?
No. Most of the folks in town may not be aware of it. It was a real, and we're talking about Dr. T.L. Lowry here. Everybody see T.L. Lowry. Look at the hair. Look at the hair. Does it look like him? Hallelujah.
It really does.
You've got to do the voice. Praise God. T.L. Lowry. Well,
he was a good guy.
He really was. And the story behind him, I'll take you back a long time here. I was raised, as most people in town would know, in Church of God denomination. And my dad was a pastor. My grandfather was a pastor. My great-grandfather was like a pioneer minister. So I'm actually four generations. I first remember T.L. Lowry with jet black hair, and he always wore a black suit.
Always.
You would never catch him in anything but a black suit. And it was the Roanoke, Virginia. I love talking about this. You know, the older you get, you talk about.
I know. Yeah.
You know, now
I know
why old people do this. You know?
But we'll talk about it anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And I was a kid. I was probably 5 or 6 years old. They had a tent up. Remember, he had a big tent. You may remember that. So they used his tent, and the chairs, metal folding chairs, very uncomfortable, by the way.
The fold out.
Compared to what we have now. And I remember him preaching. And I don't know why I remember. I guess it was just such a new event for my life as a kid, because I'd never been in a tent before. Sawdust, you remember that? Sawdust. And then the ants, if you kept it up long enough, the ants would get in that sawdust and start building outside of it. And you'd have red ants sometimes. And sometimes you'd be in church and you'd start crawling up. People be screaming, and folks would think they're shouting the victory, because they're screaming with the red ants. So that was the first encounter. And then at age 11, I've never forgot this. The Church of God Tabernacle in Roanoke, Virginia, it was a metal open-air tabernacle. Brother Lowry came to preach. Now, in that day, when you said T.L. Lowry's coming, they came from everywhere. Your largest crowd of any service, any place, was when Dr. Lowry showed up, because people believed something was going to happen. You know, someone's going to get touched, someone could be healed, so something's going to happen. And that's the anticipation, the expectation that people had. That night, I've never forgot this. I've told this publicly so many times. I'm 11 years old, 11 years of age, sitting in the back with some kids, just kind of cutting up, not paying attention. So Dr. Lowry stands up on the wall. That we had a concrete painted lime green wall in the front, and he jumped up on that from behind the pulpit. And I can still see him to this day. It's like a silhouette. He's got his microphone. He's got his hands up, and he said, "There's some of you kids sitting out there right now that if the rapture happened, you'd grab the coattail of your mother and father, trying to hold on and make it, but your hands would slip like grease, and you'd fall to the ground." He scared the daylights out of me. That was the first time.
You sound like him.
Yeah, well, I've been around him so long, we learned how to just. Charlie sounds like him too. Charlie's sitting over here, and it scared me so bad. I went to the altar. I think it was the very first time I ever really went to an altar. Then following up on this, I want to say.
Now, was he from Cleveland at that time?
At that time, he was evangelizing pretty much at that time, because this is when I was about 11. The greatest miracle I ever saw. Well, let me say I won't say the greatest, because I know what the greatest was. It was in Pulaski, Virginia, in October 1981. The first miracle I ever saw, which was to me a true miracle, was in that same tabernacle. He came to preach, and I was, for some reason, I can't remember. I may have been playing the drums. I was a kid, but I was up on the platform, which is very rare. normally you stay out there, but somehow I was up on the platform. There was a man that was limping really, really bad. He had a cane, and he was just, you could tell he was in a lot of pain. Well, Brother Lowry was notorious for grabbing the canes, and he'd either break them. Of course, he had a real problem when they were oak. There's some jokes like that. He'd go, hallelujah, and he'd go, whoa, you know. But he was notorious for breaking them, and he'd pray for people. And honestly, a lot of people, I'll never keep up with who did not. God knows that. But I'm saying, when you were there, a lot of people definitely were touched, and some were definitely healed. Well, he prayed for this man, laid hands on this man, and the man went backwards all the way to the ground, and he looked like a rubber ball. He literally went to the ground and bounced up. Then he was shaking that leg that he had been limping on. He was shaking it, violently shaking it. And as he started shaking his leg, he started yelling, I'm healed, and he ran. He ran full speed. But the part that I remember was when Brother Lowry had that man's cane, you know, he was, hallelujah, you know, in a microphone. Man's running around the tabernacle, and Lowry just threw that cane and missed my head by that much. That's what I remember. But what happened was when I was called into the ministry, I wish I'd have brought this book I could have showed folks. When I was called into the ministry about age 16 in Salem, Virginia, where my dad pastored, Salem Church of God.
You were living there then?
I was living in Salem, Virginia then. Brother Larry at that time was on the executive committee here in Cleveland. He was in headquarters. But I had admired him and kept up with him. Every time he would preach in Virginia, I would always try to get there somehow. If it was a church, or if it was, you know, camp meeting, what they call a prayer conference, I would go there and try to be with him. And I remember sending him a letter asking him, and I sent him a check because I'd seen some books he'd written, and he sent me a book back signed. This I still have this. Yeah. This is so cool.
About like this. Yeah.
And so there in the book, Power with God is the yellow book. Is that the name of it, Charlie? You probably know the exact name of it. Something with the power of God. Yellow cover. I still see. I have it at the office. And when you opened it, there was a picture of him in the tent with this crowd of like 5,000 people. And here I am. I'm probably at that time 16 years old. Felt the call of God to preach. And he said, and took a blue ink pen and wrote, "You can do this, T.L. Lowry." And I sat there and I thought, is that even possible? You know, I'm just a kid, felt called to the ministry. It was not at that time at all about me preaching to crowds. I was glad to preach anywhere. And I preached to help people. I preached because I have a real desire to teach people. And so I had a burden for it. I was in public school, but I'd write messages in public school. And I never will forget that picture. And so we got to a point, of course, this was many years later, where right here in town, we've had 5,000 to 6,000 people show up in one night in one meeting. Of course, overseas you have large attendance in some outdoor meetings. But here in the U.S., we've had services of 3, 5, 6, 8, 9,000 people at times. Depends on the size of the church. Yeah. Sometimes you go to a very large church. It's not that you're drawing in that group of people. You do draw in visitors, yes, but it's the church is that large. And then I always, for some reason, go back to that picture. Just go back to it. And so, back to the building. See, it takes me so long to get to one story. Have you noticed? Yes, my wife says to me, get to the point. Get to the point. So, making a long story short, we wanted to build a internet Bible school. And so, Dr. Brian Cutshaw was pastoring in St. Louis. I preached for him many times. And he came to Chattanooga to work with, now help me here, Charlie, Kevin Wallace, who's a great friend of mine as well. And when they got into the buildings at the school that they had bought, there was a lot of asbestos. And so they could not they thought they would go in, remodel, and start. And some other things came out of that. And so Dr. Cutshaw and I were talking one day, and he said that he really felt the Lord had spoke to him to build somehow a Bible school. And that's why he left this 5,000-6,000 member church, one of the reasons why, to come to Chattanooga to help build the Bible school. And I sat there and I said, well, you know, I've never thought of it, but one time, and I said in the 1990s, and I'm sharing some things here most folks in Cleveland would not be aware of, But in the 1990s, I was approached by a businessman who had investors who said, we believe that, this was 99. It was before the bubble, before the internet bubble. And if I'm looking over here, I'm looking at Charlie. So if you folks watching
Charlie Ellis.
Charlie, you ought to come over here. You ought to sit in that.
Yeah.
Come and sit in the uppermost seat of the synagogue, man. Come on, right
We'll
here.
move TL's
Yeah, we'll move
picture.
to you. Come in. That way I can look at you this way. I don't have to. Yeah, you come on over. Charlie's my man here.
We'll
right
move
hand.
TL.
Yeah, TL. Yeah, there he is. He's watching.
We'll have him watch
Your spiritual son. So, what was I at? I'm laughing.
The late 90s about the Bible school.
Yes. So forgive me for that, but they say it's age. I need some of that. What is it? Prevagen? What is that memory stuff? Remind me to get some. I think I need to try that. You know what I'm talking about?
Prevagen. Yeah, Prevagen.
They say it works.
The spray thing.
Yeah, just for your memory.
Yeah.
Anyway, you help me here.
It's pretty good so far.
Just remind me if I need to. So, what was we talking about?
About the Bible.
This is so bad because people think, what's wrong? What's happened to the guy? A lot of us, my mind's been tired over the past couple of months. So the Bible school. So Dr. Cutshaw, I said, why don't we just take the material that we have and come up with an internet school? So he said, great. So we actually took a suitcase and went to our warehouse here in Cleveland, and I got DVDs and books and things like that, and that's how it started. And then we were going to take the office at Voice of Evangelism, which I have an office there, and clear it out and let Dr. Cutshaw and about 2 workers work in that one office. But his thing was, that's a good idea, but I have to have privacy when I'm studying, and with phones ringing and stuff, it might not be. So I thought, wow, what do we do? Mm-hmm. So he began to develop this curriculum, which was fabulous, and I thought, now what do we do? And Dr. Lowry had, of course, had to quit traveling years ago before he passed away, and had taken a fall in France down an escalator, taken a fall, broke his ribs, and he was really, I won't say feeble because he was strong as an ox.
Strong,
oh,
yeah.
It was unbelievable, really.
I think he fell plumb down the escalator.
He did, in France, and it tore, and he recovered from
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It was like a miracle, really.
I remember that.
Yeah, and so what we did was he came to me with the building, and this is the T.L. Lowry building. Most people in town know where it is. It's right across from the mall, the back side of the mall there, and near that hotel, whatever the hotel is. Now they've changed hands a couple of times. That beautiful building at the front of it looks like the White House.
Yeah.
He built it that way, as you know.
Yeah.
And so that's called the T.L. Lowry Global Foundation Center. And at the time, that's where his office was. And I'd go in there, and this is so funny. He'd say, Perry, he said, listen, son. He said, God wants you to have this building. I said, are you going to give it to me? Well, that's not what I meant. And he would tell me over and over again, he said, I built this for you, wouldn't he? And I said, but Brother Lowry, I've got that building, and I've got the OCI building, and so many other facilities. I said, I don't know what I would do with it. I'm laying in the bed weeks later, just laying there, half asleep, and it hits me. It's like a light bulb. It's like turning a floodlight on in the middle of the darkness. And the Lord spoke to me and said, the T.L. Lowry building is to be the Internet Bible School. And it hit me, and I knew. I know just like I'm looking at you or Charlie, I knew just that, that's it. I said, what do I do? And the Lord spoke to my spirit and said, tell him you're going to pay his debt off. And because what? He had it sold for a certain amount, and that sale fell through. And I knew that had happened. And I kept saying, why did that fall through? The guy, had it planned and said he had the finance, but it fell through. And I knew that put Brother Lowry under a lot of financial stress he didn't need. Yeah. So the Lord spoke to me and he said, I want you to tell him this is the plan. You're going to pay his building off. That was $1.6 million. And you're going to give him $10,000 a month the rest of his life. Well, the guy would never pass away.
Yeah, oh yeah, you wouldn't take that.
Don't pay him. He's like Methuselah.
Yeah.
I said, he'll live to be 120. This building will cost me $20 million.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know, but the Lord said to me, didn't he? I told Charlie, I said, and when I say the Lord said, there's Christian people that don't understand how that operates. He doesn't say in an audible voice, but you feel it in your spirit like you know that you know that you know.
Like a clear understanding.
It's a clear feeling that you can't get away from that brings perfect peace. I mean, if people have never experienced that, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So when I say the Lord spoke, that's how I knew. So these ideas were not something I'd been thinking about or meditating on. These were things that were suddenly just dropping. Man, I feel something just talking about it right now. Woo, dropping in my spirit, you know. So I said, Dr. Larry, I've got a plan that I believe the Lord gave me. I said, the Lord spoke to me to pay, because he was literally having to go to the bank and borrow money to pay the payments. And sometimes we would help him. And that's kind of personal. I don't like everybody to know that, but now they do.
Yeah.
You know, something happens when you get older. You just start telling everything when you get older, you know. And so I said, I'm going to pay your loan off. It was 1.6. He said, no, Perry, you know this facility is valued at $4 million. I said, yep, and I don't have $4 million. I said, this is what the Lord told me. Pay your building off. He said, and then I said, to honor you as a man that has done great things for God, because you'll never go wrong. And there's a lot of great retired ministers in town. Some of them pastored small churches like my dad. But you will never, ever go wrong by giving honor to a man and woman who have been in ministry that gave their life and had to pay the price and had to work an extra job, or sometimes had to deal with crazy people. Church folks are crazy. And sometimes had to deal with things that were so tough. You will never go wrong by honoring them, and God will honor you for honoring them. So I said, I want to honor you. Our ministry, VOE, Voice of Evangelism, wants to honor you. I'll give you $10,000 a month, because he had to live, pay bills like anybody else.
Yeah.
And he said, let me pray about it.
Yeah.
And I thought, I walked out there saying, God's going to do this because if the Lord spoke to me, He'll pray and tell it.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah.
He called the board, and the board said, that is the greatest idea, because you want this to be ministry. You don't want to sell it to a business or a secular place. You want it to be ministry related. And so the board unanimously, it was in 48 hours, said, sell it to Perry. So I found the paper the other day in my files where we signed it, and he said, no, Perry, DL. He said, Perry, there's one more thing. Just one more thing I need you to do. Well, I've been around TL my whole life. So I said, okay, now I'm gonna be putting out something else. Yeah. He said, this place needs a roof. And he said, that roof was $68,000. And he said, we don't have it. And I said, well, if I'm
got his lips exactly.
Oh,
right.
We hung around.
Exactly.
Charlie does it too.
Because he never did move his bottom lip. He let that hang.
Hallelujah, thank
He let
God.
that hang it.
Yeah,
didn't he?
He's got it down. One of my sidelines of things I do, and nobody in Cleveland knows this, my staff, is I imitate preachers. I imitate their voices. You know Morris Sorella? Have you ever heard? You've never heard of Morris? Sounds just like him, don't it? Yeah. And so one thing I learned you don't do is you don't go to a Morris Sorella meeting and talk like Morris. Yeah. I tried it one time, and everybody went, okay, well, folks, I'm just cutting up here. And David, his son, is over there on the floor laughing, And I did TL one time at his church, and the people were just slapping each other with a high five. And TL was sitting there going, I couldn't tell if he was okay with it or not. He said, that's all right, son. It's all done in good humor. It's funny.
When I was building his building towards the end, he would go in every day. I don't know. I guess everybody knows this, or you probably know.
No, that's how he is.
He would
walk through
about 2 o'clock. Yep. He would eat Oreos and Dr.
Pepper. Always.
And I'd go in there.
And never had diabetes. You know what I'm saying? And he'd come and inspect it and see how it was going. He'd say, hey, Dee, listen, I don't particularly like that wall there. Can we move it?
In a few minutes.
In a few minutes, yeah.
Right,
I'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow, Dee. Wouldn't he? I'll be back tomorrow.
We literally took that building in 3 weeks from not where everybody else was like 2 months. He had to have it done in like 12 days. It was something absolutely ridiculous.
It was an office. But we did it. But if people would remember what it looked like and see it now.
Oh,
And I'll talk about now in a moment. So anyway, we bought the building. Mm-hmm. And the odd part was he passed away 2 months later. I gave him 2 checks. And Steve, his son, and I are really close friends. He said, well, you killed Dad, didn't you? I said, Steve, don't say that. No, I didn't kill you. He said, the only thing after Mom passed away, Sister Larry passed away, Mildred, The only thing that kept Dad inspired was him wondering what would happen to this building. And he said when you bought it, it fulfilled his vision to be a place that would teach people and mentor people in the Bible and so forth.
That was truly his mission. I know that for a fact.
That was his assignment. He wanted to have a training center of some kind. And so we bought the building for ISO, the International School of the Word. Dr. Bryant Cutshaw and I founded it. I have, and I'll get to this later about the physical things I've dealt with, but I've turned we own the facility, VOE, not personally, Voice of Evangelism, but we turned the total control of ISO to Dr. Cutshaw with his staff and his team. All I basically will do is we have a beautiful, fantastic, unbelievable prayer center there. The guy who designed American Idol designed our prayer set. And when you turn it on, isn't it? There's nothing like it in the world, in my opinion. And man, we had big American flags on these high-def screens the other night praying for the nation. And it's just, you turn it on and you don't know what you're watching. You're not sure, is this you'd turn it on that night and say, is this a political event? Or
It's like a Trump rally?
Yeah, really. And it looks like a set from ESPN if you've ever seen ESPN. And so the building is being used for the school, and we have about 6,500 to 7,000 online students. And Dr. Brian Cutshaw, you may know Brian, is doing oh my goodness, he's doing a fantastic job. So there's no question that the Lord has led him here. He now serves, we just voted him in recently on our board of directors. He has been a friend of mine. Before I was married, I introduced him and his wife at the date, well, I didn't introduce, I should say. They kept coming to the revival, Dr. Cutshaw, he wasn't Dr. Cutshaw then, Brian, and Faith, and they ended up marrying, and they live in town, so he runs the school out of the Lowry Center. But it's used for the school, and on Thursdays, it's used for the Global Prayer Network. And boy, I wish I had a picture of that, because it is, can you go online and find a picture? And maybe we'll hold it up to one of the cameras. Yeah. I would like for people to see what it looks like.
Sure.
And so people can join us there in person. Of course, don't be crazy because we have great security there, okay? Yeah. I always tell people our ministry is surrounded by real tough professional security people because of me being on television, nutty people. Yeah. The world does have a few nuts, fruits and nuts.
Where do you get?
There it is. Can we show that? Can I hold it up?
Yeah. So that's over at T.L. Lowry's building.
Can we zoom in there? Where do you want me to put it?
That's good.
Oh, you want to do it?
He's good.
You got it? You want Charlie? Charlie's going to hold it up. Now, again, the man that designed American Idol, move it just a little bit that way. There you go. Designed that set, and I hope you can see that. That really doesn't do it justice, but
that's a lot of LEDs.
Yeah, that's a ton of 40-some screens? Do we have that many? Yeah, and so what happens is we have 8 screens on poles that prayer requests come up. And so our people stand and read the request and pray. Mm-hmm. And the Lord really impressed me years ago that prayer would be a key to everything he was going to do. So our people will have, on a low off night, 40, on a good night, 250 people.
On a
Thursday night who go up there and pray. And so that's the story of how a Voice of Evangelism, our ministry that we've been under for years since we've been in Cleveland, was able to obtain the building from Brother Lowry. And we have a place there. What do we call the room? What is Dr. Cutshaw? It has the pictures of Dr. Lowry, the video of him preaching. It's set up.
Oh, you got
like
a room
tent.
for it?
No, we got a big mural of him preaching.
I believe some of that was there before. While we were building
mural
it.
Was.
Yeah, I think he had some
in that
videos of him.
Yeah, we've redone it.
Yeah. But it's beautiful.
But he had some sort of
And so that is to keep the memory of the man who did such a great job that had such an influence on so many people's lives, before this generation. Yeah. I mean, we'll have kids go in there and they'll hear him teach and preach and they'll see all the signs and the crusades. And for a young minister who's just starting out, it inspires you, because I would study when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. One of the things I loved to study was the healing revival. And the ministers that hosted that from 1948 to about 1968. And I mean, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I would say I'm about as much an expert as anyone you'd meet, because I have spent thousands of hours studying A.A. Allen, Oral Roberts, Jack Coe. And at the center, I have an office there. In fact, I had more offices than Donald Trump at one time. Was that true? Charlie, it was an inside joke at the minute. He's got one at the house, one at OCI, one at ISO, one at VOE, one at the lodge. I mean, I had 6, I think, at one time. And so in my office is a case. It has a glass over it, and it's Oral Roberts' briefcase he used to put his sermons in his tent. It's his briefcase. And when the lady I met, her and her husband were driving me around Tulsa. I was preaching at this really great church, Sharon Daugherty's church, and she knew I loved Oral Roberts, and so I was able to take A.A. Ledford, who was a minister. I got his library when he passed away, and he had 5 first edition Oral Roberts books from the 1940s and 50s, and I sent them to Oral before he died, and he signed them. Now, that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Because you don't get signatures of these great men often, you know. But most of the time when they sign something, a family, the younger generation just thinks, well, that's an old magazine or that's an old book, and they throw it away, which is bad. But this lady sent this to me, and she says, we know you love Brother Roberts. And Brother Roberts' daughter sent me, she's a lawyer in Tulsa, a box. And this was incredible. It was his original magazines. From 1948, I have the very first Healing Waters. And this is like for theologians, for historians, for ministers. This is like diamonds. This is like gold or rubies, in comparison to what the world would say. Because these are things you just can't find. You just cannot find them. So I had another ministry partner. His name was Ralph Sullivan, who had every magazine A.A. Allen put out, every book by A.A. Allen. So when he passed away, he told his wife, be sure Perry gets this. So I have, he had W.B. Grant books. So in other words, the healing revival of 1948, which was Under the Tents, which Brother Larry came out of that era.
Through 48 to 63.
About 63 was kind of the peak of the peak of it, you know. But by that time, no one was in tents. They were going to auditoriums. And you ask Oral Roberts, why did you stop the tent meetings? He said, air conditioning.
Yeah.
that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Seriously, you know, because those tents got hot.
Yeah.
So I've been blessed by things like that. I've been blessed before T.L. Osborne, who is probably the greatest missionary outside of Reinhard Bonnke. In fact, T.L. Osborne, to this day in India, there are books that are 40 years old that people still have in their home that they got from Brother Osborne's meeting 40 years ago. And Brother Osborne, I found in the library, I don't know if it was my dad's or Brother Ledford's, but I found in the library several of T.L. Osborne's books. I sent them to him. He signed them, sent me a letter back, and he has since passed away. So one of the things I enjoy doing, and this is, again, a little private thing, but it's a lot of fun, is I have collected ball cards since I was 8. I have some fabulous ball cards. I'm going to probably put them up at an auction in the next year or two, some of them. Some are very rare. Of course, they're locked up in a safe place under heavy security. So, you know, again, if you're trying to be a thief, you're either going to get caught or killed. So please don't do something stupid, you know. It's true. So, but anyway, we have, I have collected signatures. One of the things I enjoy is signatures. So I have, for the sports people out there, we became friends through a very strange circumstance with a family called the Tungavaloas. The Tungavaloa sons are Tulia and Tua. Tua was the quarterback for the University of Alabama that beat Georgia at the national championship, okay? And I'll tell a story about that that's phenomenal. And Tulia, according to Nick Saban, because we had lunch with Nick, Pam and I and some partners did, Nick told me, he said, Tua's brother, this is when they were at the university, is actually a better passer than Tua. And so just in Maryland, somebody told me when I walked in here, in the Maryland game, he was just going crazy. Tua can run and pass, and he does well, but he's a little awkward. He's left-handed because he can be a little awkward. Yeah. Tulia can run circles around you and almost flip it with his hands, and it's a spiral, and it just hits him right on. Mm-hmm. He broke every record at this school in Alabama. So what I was going to say is when as a freshman, we were invited to have lunch with Nick Saban. And I know the Tennessee fans are booing me right now, but it's okay. Let me just tell the Tennessee fans something. This is a fact. And Nala, who is his dad, would verify this. When Nala called me, I called him, I said, Nala, where is Tulia going? He's leaving Alabama, which surprises me. Well, he left Alabama because he wasn't going to start this year. Alabama got the #1 recruit from California. And then you've got Paul Bear Bryant's grandson, 3 quarterbacks. So he just said, you know what? If I'm not playing, I'm leaving. And I tried to talk his dad, believe this or not, on sending him to the University of Tennessee. And I know it was on the list. And I said, if you'll send him to the University of Tennessee, I promise you, I'll do my best. I'll go up and see him. I'll hang out with him, some of the guys, get him involved in it. You know, there's some good churches up there. And then I was so disappointed that he went to Maryland. Oh. And that's where he went to, was Maryland. Yeah. Now, can I say this?
So, so you almost got him here.
I don't think I had any influence at all, honestly. But the dad listened to me. He said, well, you know, we're considering, and I know Tennessee was looking. Yeah. But had he come to Tennessee, Tennessee would be undefeated right now. Mm-hmm. That's how good this kid is. Mm. So, Tulia Tungavaloa. Anyway, the story that I love telling this because this was the strangest thing that has ever happened in my life. If you want to hear something really strange, and I know I'm all over the board, but I think that's what your program's about.
That's what we're doing. Yeah.
Just go all over the board.
Just discussion.
I was we have to go back to just think of the year that Alabama and Georgia went to the national championship. Mm-hmm. It was that year, which is 3 years ago. See, I lose track of years, and anything with numbers I lose track of. 3 years ago, I think. Okay. I did not know who Tua was. I didn't really know if he was a Christian, very strong Christian, never met the family. So we are going to the University of Georgia. No, let's see who they play. Florida State, Alabama game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. First game. Yeah. And I was blessed to have a friend by the name of Saran Stacy, who played for Alabama, big superstar for Alabama, who said to me, if you will come, I'll get you and Mike into the chapel service. When I got there, the Lord spoke to me very clearly and said, I want you to talk to the young man from Hawaii. This is how it came to me. He didn't even, Tua, you know, the young man from Hawaii, and I want you to give him this word. This year, it'll be the biggest game in Alabama. The quarterback for Alabama will be taken out. He will come in and Alabama will be behind. He's going to bring Alabama back in this game, and they're going to win it, and he will give Jesus Christ the glory for it. And I heard, did I not tell you immediately? Because these are those things that I hear sometimes in my spirit, and you know that you're not making it up because it burns in you. It's like you can't get away from it. So I said to Saran, we were at the hotel where the team was, Alabama team was, and I said, Saran, the boy from Hawaii. I call him the boy from Hawaii. How disrespectful is that? I said, the boy from Hawaii, can you get me to him? I have a word from the Lord. I said, this is a real word from the Lord. So we had all access. We go back where the team is eating, and he meets Najee. Was Najee Harris, I think. I think it was Najee. He's one of the running backs. God, he was a monster, of course. And he says, where's Tua? He says, I think he ate and left. So Nick walks out, the coach, and he says, hello, coach, because, again, this guy that's doing the talking he's a hero in Alabama, Saran Stacy. And Saran asked Nick, he said, where's Tua? He said, we're looking for him. He said, you know, he might have went back to the room. So I didn't know what to do then. I said, okay, I've got this word. I want to give it to him. I said, all right, Mike, you come here. Saran, you come here. And there was one, it seemed like it was one other person. Anyway, I said, I have a word. I want you to put this in your phone and write it down. Now listen to me very carefully. This boy from Hawaii named Tua, it's going to be the biggest game of the year in Alabama. They're going to take the quarterback out. He will come in. When he comes in, he's going to bring the team back. It's almost going to be a miracle. And when he brings him back, he will give the Lord glory. And God is going to exalt this young man because of something about the faith that he has or something in the Lord, okay? Now remember, I know nothing about them or the family. Mm-hmm. I really don't. I know nothing. I know nothing about it other than they came from Hawaii. All right. Then Saran says to me, do you want to pray for some of the team? I said, sure. So we prayed for the running back. Can you help me? Who was the running back before Najee came in? I think it was him. Charlie, you're an Alabama fan. You have to know these things. What is wrong with you? Charlie usually knows everything when I ask him. So who? Henry, yeah.
Henry.
Derrick Henry. That may have been who it was. I don't remember, but it may have been Derrick and not Najee. But it was one. So we're praying for him. Then a man walks up to me, a young man walks up to me, and he says to me, this is one of our linebackers, one of our great linebackers. And the Lord speaks to me and says, he's going to be injured. And I said, no, Lord, no, I'm not. There's no way in 1,000,000 years that I'm going to look at this guy and say that. He said, pray for his knee. Both of them. I said, you know what? I said, I feel like with tonight's game, I need to just pray over your knees. He said, well, man, do it. So we're out there, players coming back. We're just laying hands on people, praying for them. And that night in the game, he got hit low and was taken out of the game. But they hit his ankle instead of his knee. And I remember, Saran looks at me and says, you freak me out. He said, that's freaky. I said, bro, I don't even know how this works. I just know that anyone who's ever known me personally for a long time will say, Perry, if there's one thing about Perry, he has an ear to hear. If he tells you the Lord said something to him, you need to listen to it. And I don't brag on that. I'm just saying I can't explain it other than I can hear. For some reason, I can hear.
Maybe you just listen.
That's what my dad says. You got to listen in order to hear something. You got to listen.
Yeah.
That's what Dad always said. So, long story made short, they go through the whole season and they get to the national championship. And everybody will remember this that was watching. The quarterback that was in, and I can see him, but again, I can't think of his name. Goodness sakes, I know him. I've met and prayed for him. Jalen Hurts is doing horrible. And I have a theater room in my house. We're all up there. There's Georgia fans there. And there's Alabama fans there. My wife is a radical Alabama. Radical. Oh, my goodness. It's Jesus and Alabama in that order, Yeah. Then husband third.
Yeah.
It's Alabama. So I said, you got to put Tua in. And it started coming out of me. The prophecy cannot lie. The prophecy cannot lie. They come out and they said, Tua Tagovailoa, the freshman quarterback's coming in the game. I started running. I had a towel. Were you there? You came to that. Yeah. Charlie, you were there. You were up there. Yeah. And I was waving. I said, watch this. It'll be the greatest comeback. So Saran Stacy texts me, Perry, this is your prophecy.
During the game.
He texts Nick's wife and says, you're going to win the game. There's a prophetic word on it. Well, that puts you like in a bind because if you're wrong, man, you're a false prophet. Get your rocks out and stone to do.
Yeah.
But I knew it. It was the weirdest thing. So the game goes on, and the next thing you know, it's a tie. Kicker comes in. Alabama can win the game. And I said to everybody, listen to me carefully. The kicker has to miss. Perry, don't say that. What do you say? Nope. He has to miss. Tua's got to be the hero, not the kicker.
Yeah.
He missed. A chip shot. He missed. And I said, just watch. Well, Georgia got a field goal, I believe. So Tua comes in. And one of the things I remember, and I left this out, was he has to focus intently. That was part of the word. He must focus intently to win. And all this was part of it. And I didn't know what that meant. Well, he got sacked. And I said, oh, Lord. And I've been telling everybody that, God told me he's going to win this game and this and that and the other. Well, what I didn't know, because we later talked to Tua. I went to a game. We rode around on a golf cart and all kinds of stuff. He's a great kid. We went to the game, and Tua said what happened was he got in the huddle. And it may have been his roommate. It was somebody close to him. He said, I promise you, I'm going to be open. Hit me. I promise you. He dropped back, and we threw the pass, and that guy got it. Game over. And what did he do? Now, remember, he hasn't been told the prophecy yet.
He's supposed to give the glory to God.
But he's not been told that this was going to happen yet.
Yeah.
But Saran, who knows the family, has all of it written down. And Mike, of course, does too. So he said, before anything else, I have to give, you remember he said, I give glory to the Lord Jesus Christ. Look, I had a drum. I was beating a drum. I was throwing a candy. I was going crazy. I was hitting people in the head. I probably hit Pam a couple of times. She said, would you please calm down? All right. So to make a long story short, I think it was Mike sent the word to Saban. Where Saban's he's a great coach. He's not a spiritual minded man. I doubt he even read it. And then they got a hold of Talia, which is their, Nala, which is the father. And so they said this was predicted in detail. So then they knew who I was. Well, then Tua says, oh, we watched, that's Perry Stone. We know him. My family watches him in Hawaii. And I'm not going to tell you what they said. It was just really kind what they said about me. But they said, oh, we know him. I want to meet Perry. I want to meet Perry. And so they'd watched us on TV. The aunt is a pastor there, so she'd watched us for years. And so I had a Warrior Fest here in town, which was young people. And I didn't do this myself, but I had Mike, who's very supportive of the University of Alabama. I said, Mike, find out from the SEC all the guidelines of me having Tua come and speak. Man, they sent us a list. I mean, because he was coming in Tennessee, they did not want it to look like he was trying to recruit anybody. So you can't do that. That's illegal SEC rules. So we had to sign a paper. He will not, if any players are there, because here's a famous quarterback. Players are going to show up from Tennessee or whatever.
Yeah.
You can't talk to him. He cannot give autographs out. He just basically can't promote anything. He can all he can do, drive up and speak, and there's no reimbursement. No money can change hands with the family. I think you can reimburse the university for gas or something. I don't know what. I don't even remember. I may be wrong on that. I don't remember. But it was very strict, and we followed those guidelines. We showed, before I introduced him, the place was packed. Before I introduced him, we showed that comeback on the big screen. And when I introduced him, it went crazy. You thought Jesus had walked in the house. Those kids were hooping. Were you there? You were there, hollering and screaming. And he had never spoke before to a public group except maybe at his mom's small church. So he told me, he said, man, I am a nervous wreck. I said, just get up there and talk about the Lord. And he basically talked about 15 minutes and prayed the rest of the time. And that's how we got to be very close friends. And so when they were at the university, Talia and him both, I would text them before the game, FaceTime. I was in Israel, I FaceTimed Talia before the game. And those relationships, and we don't know why. Why would the Lord speak to me to tell him that? Or why would he put me in their life? Pam and I haven't figured that out. We do know that the Lord puts you in people's lives for a reason. And I do know that and again, I'm not name dropping here. People that know me know, he knows me that I would normally on a social media site never tell these stories like some I'm going to tell tonight because it sounds like you're name dropping. And I don't want people to think I'm doing that because I'm not that way by nature. I'm just Perry the minister. I don't do that. And Charlie, am I telling the truth, Charlie? Charlie knows I'm just, agree with me.
Amen.
No, but there's a gentleman that owns a big NFL team that we've been friends with, and his wife used to give me tickets to the Super Bowl. And if I called his name, everybody would know it, and they would know the team. They've won Super Bowls. That'd give you a clue. And he was very interested in Tua going there. In other words, Tua would be there right now in place of the quarterback they've got. They're not doing real great right now, but Tua would have been their quarterback. But the problem was, this is my opinion, the problem was that Tua was from Hawaii, and the weather up there in this area is horrible. Like right now it's snowing. Yeah. So when you've been from a state where it's 70, 80, 90 degrees, whatever, then you go south. And my opinion, I've not talked to them about that, but my opinion is probably if I were him, I would have selected Miami or South because of that.
Obvious.
I think anybody would.
Yeah, sure.
From California or even from an island versus a northern team where it's really
That's why the Florida colleges recruit some more people.
People want to go there.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's true. Yeah. So that's one of the more unusual incidents that we've had happen.
Do you have a lot of connections like that? I'm not connections with people, but I mean, like this happened, and now that happened, and now this happened. So it's like God's trying to work through you. Yeah,
I wouldn't say a lot, but I do have some really. A family, for example, our Omega Center International, which is now the Ramp. We can talk about that in a little bit. Is that real beautiful building? I think you've seen it. The OCI, we call it. People in town know it as OCI.
I say there's VOE,
Voice of Evangelism, OCI, Omega
on
Center
Michigan
International,
Avenue,
right?
And then there's
Omega Center, which is like a convention center. That's what people kind of know it for, a convention center. That's not that, but that's what.
And then T.L. Lowry's building.
And then the Global ISO. So I was actually heading up all three of those till recently, and so I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, when it comes to the way that the Lord sets this up with us is He allows you to meet people. So the miracle of the OCI facility was we built it in a recession. And this is this is not a negative against my banks in town, because I totally understand. We sat down with 3 of our banks. We use 3 banks in Cleveland. And we've been a blessing to the banks, if you understand what I'm saying, for 40 years.
I can imagine.
And they would not give me a loan because of the recession and because the higher lending places had just locked up everything. And Perry, and I said, well, they said, how are you going to pay for the building? I said, well, by faith, like we do everything else, the Lord's going to help us. Well, in a loan of $4 to $8 million, you can't say that. It's not by faith. They said, what's it for? Do you have a membership? No, we don't have a membership. Well, what's it for? Young people. So you're going to have young people coming in that can't pay bills. I said, yeah, that's probably true. And so it upset me a little bit at first. I said, Pam, here we are. We've already stepped out into this building. And the builder that we had, which was from Knoxville, Denark, did not even want to build it because they said to, you remember Bob Gessing, Bob, the architect. They said to Bob had designed our building, they said to Bob, this man
He did T.L. Larry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And he's a ministry partner. So he said, Denark, the head of Denark from Knoxville, said to Bob, who was our kind of not the contractor, the architect, he said, if I step out and build this building, here's what's going to happen. We're in a recession as bad as the Great Depression almost. All building has stopped. He can't get a loan. He's going to run out of money, and I'm going to be stuck. And he's going to be stuck. So Bob said to him, you don't know his God real well. Maybe you need to get acquainted. So Bob said, would you trust me on this one? He said to the man, do you remember, it wasn't Ken. Ken was with us earlier. Gordon. He said to Gordon, Bob did, if you will trust me on this one, he has a prayer team that will pray the money in. And the guy said, well, I've never heard of anything like that. He said, you have to trust me. He said, will you trust me one time? Proceed with the building and the money will come. Well, we started building and then we started needing hundreds of thousands, then millions of dollars.
What year was this?
2012.
Okay, 2012.
Right after the recession.
Yeah, so we're on the tail end of something bad. And we didn't know per se millionaires, and we didn't have secret donors, and we didn't have big donors. It's kind of like, I'm not Billy Graham nor comparing myself to him, but it's kind of like when Billy Graham said, my givers are moms and dads that send in $5 and $10. That's my people. That's the mountain people. That's the Kentucky people, the Alabama people. So we've never had, we will have 1 or 2 or 3 good, large donations a year from time to time, but there's not that one person that you're thinking, okay, I'm about to build an $18 million building. I got $4 million, and the bank won't give me a loan. So here's what we did. We had a barn on our property, and not a bar, a barn. Because people don't hear right. Okay, that's why I did that. And so I went to some young people, and I said to them, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pray that God will send us $1 million. I'd never had $1 million donation. Didn't even know what it looked like. And they said, what's it for? I said, it's for this building. And I said, we're going to have to start getting these. Or if the VOE knew that I was about to go into such debt and in 2 years empty our accounts out, they would have all been afraid because they would have lost their jobs. Okay?
Yeah.
No, I'm just being as honest as I can be.
That's reality.
This is the real deal.
Yeah.
See, people say what you've got now don't know the price you had to pay to get there.
Yeah.
So, man, we start praying, and we would hold up our hand, 1 million, 1 million, and all of a sudden, 1 month later, out of the clear, my bookkeeper ran upstairs to my office at VOE, and she was shaking, and she had an overnight envelope. And I'm thinking, oh, she's shaking, and she looked like she'd been crying. This ain't good.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was, but who knows? Who knows? So she says, you need to sit down, and I'm thinking bad news. And I don't know why, because it's just in me to think the worst, I guess, or something. Oh, God, here goes trouble. Trouble again, Yeah. And she said, somebody just sent this in. It was $1 million check from a trust fund. Oh, my goodness. I'm just like, we're all jumping. I run downstairs and tell the staff we're all jumping.
Yeah.
And so when I blanked out the information, made a copy, blanked out the information, and took it to the little service in the service in the building we were in with about 60 people at the time. The little Tasso Road, that little church, about 60 people. I said, I've got a miracle that just happened. And I flashed the check up, And let me tell you something. You have never seen people go wild. You thought that they'd won the Super Bowl. I mean, they were throwing chairs, throwing people, I thought I saw a baby in the air. I told somebody that one time. They said, really? I said, no. The old expression, throwing babies.
Yeah.
I mean, we were going crazy.
Yeah.
They were running. My pastor at that time, youth pastor, he literally got on the floor and just rolled. I said, he's a holy roller. Look at it. It was pandemonium, but it was mostly young people, so who cares? You know? Older folks would say, oh, my God, what's going on here? This is crazy. Well, you get $1 million and see how you act. So needless to say, that was going to be spent for the steel and some other things. Then they said, what do you need? I said, we're going to have 2. So help me if when we prayed again, this is the power of prayer. And the Lord taught me how to pray finances in when you need them. He gave me the keys. There are really some keys to financial breakthrough. Because honestly, did we have it, Charlie? We didn't have that money. But we knew we did what God told us. So I have a saying that says, God's will, God's bill. If God tells you to do it, it's up to him to pay for it. And I would just throw it off on the Lord. Hey, Lord, guess what? Perry needs your help because this is your building, not mine. And that's really how I felt. And we started getting these checks from one person. Now, we do believe now we know, and I would never say who it was, but one person helped pay off that building. That building was debt-free before we moved in it.
Golly.
And we just cried. I have to be careful because if I start acting like my dad used to and start crying, we'll never get through this.
And it's a beautiful building.
It is a fabulous building.
It's not a cheap building.
No, it's fabulous. So we started Omega Center International, which was not to be a church.
And it goes all the way through.
Oh, yeah. It actually can hold 3,500 people in the big hall, and it holds 1,000 in the little hall.
I noticed there's a pavilion in the back with like a picnic area.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just, we brought those tables up when the young people were having their big conferences. Oh. All right, now here's where we get to something which was totally, I did not see coming. I did not know the plan. Many years ago in this town, a dear friend of ours, Karen Wheaton, who has had 400,000 people, young people, she's ministered to, came to Cleveland and started what's called Cleveland Ramp. She started at the Pathway bookstore. There was an additional room in the bookstore.
Over next to...
It's a church now. Yeah, near Ace Hardware.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and that was Pathway Bookstore years ago.
Wasn't that the...
2008.
Yeah, Pathway Bookstore.
Yeah.
And then the Moody guy took over, right?
Yeah.
What was his name?
He built a church there.
Yeah.
And it's still there. The church is still there,
Yeah.
I think, doing well.
Yeah.
Living Word.
Living Word.
Living
That's
Word,
right.
yeah.
Living Word. It's a plug for Living Word right there, okay?
Chris.
So, yeah. So, in other words, Karen went there, and then she started looking for a facility. Well, I'm just sometimes I'm full of more zeal than common sense, or I go all in. If I have something that I think I should do, I immediately don't wait.
Las Vegas would love you.
Oh my goodness! I'm glad I'm not there. I'm glad I'm not a gambler. No, but I do. I'm very.
They would.
Oh yeah, I'd have nothing left when it was over with, being a poorhouse. But okay, here, we'll pound on that one. So Karen eventually pulled out of the area because she just didn't have a facility. So I went. I never will forget. It was Paul Kahn and myself and one real estate agent, Mayfield School. Mm-hmm. They had an auction. I thought, wow. Now, that would be a place that Karen could get. So I asked my board, I said, what would you let me bid on a building? Well, what's it worth? And what are you going to use it for? I said, I would give it to Karen. It would be right near the campus. And she could build her ramp in there. And I was excited. So Paul Kahn and I, who's a friend, by the way, we get in this bidding war. Mm-hmm. And I could see Paul was really steaming because my bid was going, I think he was hoping to get the school for about $450,000, and my bid was $800,000 already. Uh-huh. And finally I realized something just struck me, and I said, you know what, this will not work. Her being here will not work, but I don't know why. Well, it's like, why didn't I hear that before the bidding started, you know? And one guy in the town said, well, you didn't hear that because we needed the money in the city. That I said, I don't know if
maybe
that's
so,
true. Maybe
right?
so. I
maybe
don't know.
So.
I said, maybe so. I don't know. So anyway, Dr. Kahn, I don't want to just call him Paul Kahn, Dr. Kahn, honoring him, was able to get to school. And I don't think he really knew why I was bidding. I don't know if he ever found out. Well, he did find out later that I was bidding for actually a ministry there. Well, looking back on it, if she would have had a ramp, there's no parking.
There's no.
There's nothing. And I looked back on that, and then so we didn't get the building. When we didn't get the building, she went back to Hamilton, and she has a ramp in the UK, a ramp Chattanooga, a ramp Hamilton. Well, Knoxville, I guess that's considered one. I don't know. That's her son-in-law. So what this is, it's a place where it's a gathering place for a generation, actually. Okay.
Why the ramp? Is that
it's an acronym, and I don't even. I can never remember the acronym.
Yeah.
She says a ramp goes from this level to another level, and you have a ramp to go. So she says it means to go from level to level in the Lord. So she started a youth ministry and built it up. She has a school down in Hamilton with my daughter's at the school. It's a fabulous Bible school. It's part of it's accredited through Oral Roberts University and through one of the other Assembly of God schools.
A real college.
Yeah. In other words, it's only certain courses are accredited, but you can get 2 years credit by going with her, my understanding, or 50 hours, something like that. But it's not just that; it's just the services, the prayer meetings. You know, it's helped my daughter unbelievably, just the spiritual side of it, and the fellowship and the close knit, and the kids are really great kids. They're young people of honor. They honor ministry. They respect older people. They respect it's just a good group. All right. Without going into a lot of details that I'm not going to go into because that's all gone, I started having physical problems that I was paying no attention to, none. And it started last year. It got really bad in January and February. I couldn't sleep. For about 2 years, I would sleep an average of 4 hours a night, and get up. And then literally go all day long and come back home. And when I would fall asleep, the moment I woke up, 3:30 in the morning, I could not go back to sleep. And so I learned, Brother Larry was a little bit that way. So I would always tease, I'm just like TL, my mentor. And some people, my granddad was that way, don't require a lot of sleep. I do not require a lot of sleep to function.
I believe not getting enough sleep builds up on you.
I think it does. Time. I think it does too.
It's like you can get in a habit and it's okay, but after a while it just starts to take a toll.
It took a toll. Well, what was happening also that I was not paying attention to was they said you have to get up and exercise. First of all, I would never go to lunch. I can only say in about 2 years I actually went to lunch 5 times. I would either depend on somebody at lunch who would forget half the time to bring me lunch, but I would depend on somebody to get my lunch, or I would call and say, can somebody bring me something? And most of the time, I would eat peanuts or pistachios or beef jerky, and that was my lunch because I literally worked on a commentary on the Bible that took me 7 years. And when I worked on it, I worked 15 to 16 hours a day. And I was overdoing it. I was coming up with 150 new sermons a year, a magazine 6 times a year, writing it.
Running 3 businesses.
Yeah, that's another point. And you know what that's like?
Yeah.
The pressure of the money needed for 50 employees and their insurance. I was under contract for 7 books.
50 employees?
50. I had 50 employees with all of it. Now, you know that God helps you to pay your bills. Our budget, I don't mind saying this, I say this publicly in my meetings. My budget, my TV airtime is $5.8 million a year. $1 million a year. And I don't send out letters asking for money. Do I send out letters asking for money? Have I ever?
You mean that's how much comes in?
No, that's how much I spend just for TV airtime.
Lord.
Okay? So I don't spend, my partners never get a letter asking, I need your help, I don't do that. The Lord spoke to me and said,
that's not your type.
I just don't do it.
See you
I
as
trust
that.
God.
Yeah.
And I've always said, if He can't help me, I'll shut it down. And He knows I will. Because it'd be a whole lot less stress if you shut it down.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm not going to shut anything down, but I'm saying that He knows, Charlie has heard me say it for years, if God can't take care of it, I don't want to do it. So the airtime is that. My postage is almost $1 million a year.
Golly.
My salaries for staff, which it's reduced since then, is over $1.5 million a year. Now we're talking about, you don't send out letters asking for money, and you just basically are product oriented, which means books, tapes, and videos. And people want to criticize you and say, you need to make that book free. Well, why don't you go work for free, dummy? Go to work 40 hours next week and give your check back to your boss. Nobody in their right mind is going to do that.
Yeah, it's like my business.
You've got to have income to do what you're doing.
I found out that in a successful business, you almost can't do what you went in there to do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like to build, but I end up talking to suppliers and ordering stuff and working out. I can't just go to the job and enjoy the job.
No, you have to be involved. You, contractor, has to be involved with every single aspect because you're on a budget.
Everything
it's-
has to do with the folding of the dollar.
Yeah, yeah. And so for me, for us, people see the ministry part, but they don't understand that. Okay, OCI, Omega Center International. Do you know what my air conditioner bill was the first month I was in it? Ready? $25,000.
Golly.
$25,000. And so people look at you and say, "Why's he receiving an offering?"
It'd break you if you gave it to somebody.
No, yeah, but you know what I'm saying? It's like they look at you, not everybody, but people who don't understand this, look at you and, well, no, preachers aren't after money because it doesn't go to my pocket. I'm trying to take worldwide ministries reaching millions of people, winning millions of souls, and take what God has given me to steward over and try to do it right.
And you're not selling them anything that requires money.
No. Like in other
Right.
words, people can watch my YouTube channel, doesn't cost anything. Watch my TV program, doesn't cost me anything. Come to my conferences are free. Come to a conference, doesn't cost them anything.
Accept your belief, and it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah. But you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So notice what we do.
Yeah.
A person never has to invest a penny because I tell them in my weekend meetings, I'd say, if you don't give anything, I'm still preaching to you. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter because the Lord will take care of me. And that's where Charlie knows this. That's where I've always been with this thing. So what happened, I started, my staff didn't even know this, not even the inner circle staff. I would go to work and all of a sudden get so weak that I could not stand up, and I would end up crawling on the floor in my office, not in front of people. I would never do that. You know, I'd force myself to stand up in front of people and lay on the floor and just pass out. Now, I'm not
Is
talking
your
about
office upstairs?
that. At this time, it was at a lodge. We have the lodge building. It was there.
Where's
And,
that at?
on the property, OCI property.
Okay,
It's in
that's-
that building
that's
in the
where
back.
I was talking
And there
about,
was
yeah.
about 5 offices
Yeah,
there with people that
yeah.
worked with us. And so, and I didn't go around telling, I didn't even tell Pam. I'd just say, honey, I'm just exhausted. Well, you need to get to sleep. So even extra sleep wasn't helping me. No sleep was helping me. It kept getting worse and worse and worse. So through a series of really bizarre circumstances, I took, and my board required me to take off 6 months. Now I thought this is going to kill me. 6 months with 6 months with me going every day. Look, I would fly in. Kevin Wright's my pilot. I'd fly in late in Cleveland, be the first person at the office. Am I right, Charlie? First person.
Like what times?
Oh, 3, 4, 5 in the morning.
Golly.
And stay all day till 6 and 7. Everybody else is going home. I'm still
Doing
there.
what?
Typing, writing. I mean, the writing part was,
Writing what?
150 messages a year,
Oh.
a 24-page magazine, 7 books. That's just the start.
You're
That's-
wearing me out
No,
thinking
that's
about
just the start. That's just the beginning. Plus outlines that I had to preach for DVDs.
And
outlines for
you
CDs,
do a
CDs.
message every day.
Some-
Don't you
some-
do?
well, like tomorrow. Now I'm back in the flow
But
a
I
little bit.
subscribe to
To
your channel that it says.
YouTube, yeah. No, we do two.
But that's just. But
that's
even
basic.
even yeah. But even
But you
writing
still have
that,
to dig it out.
It takes You have
to dig it
Yeah.
out. But like,
It can't be repetitive.
but what happened to me is I got so into this. Pam would say to me, "You're going to collapse one day." I said, "Don't say that." She said, "Listen to me. You're operating off of adrenaline."
Were you eating supper?
Yeah, but not lunch. I'm a diabetic.
What time did you eat of evening?
Oh my goodness, 6 or 7 mostly, which is not healthy.
Did you ever
I mean, you
watch
should
TV at night and eat snacks?
She would tell me, she said, you eat eggs and avocado at breakfast, you eat no lunch, you come home and you eat like a dog. She said, it's killing you. And I was like, oh, honey, I'll be okay, you know. And then I'd wake up because when your stomach's full, your body is working the whole time. And doctor told me, you need to stop eating here so your body will rest.
Well, that's
You're
true.
not resting.
That's why some people do the fasting for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Gives your body a
It
rest.
gives your body a
It's
rest.
not working on that other thing.
Right. So making a long story short, the board said, Perry, you need help because there's something wrong. Something is physically wrong. You're not.
Was your mind still operating right?
A brain fog. I would just look at you. He saw me and forget what I was talking about.
It's almost like
I would
people
have to look at him all the time and say, what was I saying? Did I not? All the time.
It's almost like people describe COVID.
Yeah,
in a
honestly,
sense, the brain fog.
Look, I must have had it for a year. You know what I'm saying? Because the way
you might have brought it here.
Yeah, don't say that. I'll get an email. All right, so here's what happens. And I'm not going to...
Did you resist?
No, not at that point. I knew I needed help.
You was worried. You were waiting on somebody to ring the bell.
So I said, call my clinic in West Virginia. It's the number 4th diagnostic clinic in America. They were closed down. They said, we're not open. I said...
How come?
COVID.
Oh, okay.
I said, call Mayo. My board said, you're going to go to a top place. You're not going to just a hospital. Mayo couldn't get me until September. This was May.
Because there wasn't nothing
well, they were
necessarily wrong with it.
Yeah, they were limiting who was coming too.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's a COVID deal.
Yeah.
So I won't name the place. They aligned a place through a friend of mine who'd been there for 30 days, and it involved 3 meals that they prepare based on if you're a diabetic, there's things they won't fix.
They take your blood first and all that stuff.
Oh, it's a workout. It's a workover. It's every day. It's at a certain time. You do this, and then they also said counseling. Said you got to change your whole lifestyle. You've got to change your way of thinking. You got to find out what the deal is here.
You're a workaholic.
Yeah, I tell you what's funny. It really was a rehab. And I shouldn't even say this because when people see this, they will repeat it wrong, right, Charlie?
Well, rehab.
Cleveland, Tennessee repeats half of what you tell them wrong.
Yeah.
So please listen to me.
And that half
I
is
am
wrong.
not an alcoholic or a drug addict. Not. Please hear me.
Yeah.
But it was the only place we can get in, and it's where a lot of famous people go. Well, and I didn't tell you where it was.
Yeah.
So when I got there, they would say, "What are you in here for?" I'd say, "I don't drink and I don't take drugs or smoke cigarettes." Really? And I would say, "I'm a workaholic." But a workaholic. And I was addicted to work. I was a workaholic. That was my drug. A workaholic, being a workaholic is an addiction. It's an addiction. No, it's heroin and cocaine. It hits the same part of the brain.
See, I go to a counselor every month for workaholism.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally do. I go once a month.
But it's nothing wrong with that. People think maybe, as a minister, they said, well, you had to go get help. Yeah. Well, duh.
Yeah.
And so I go to a doctor. Famous.
Let me say one thing. They said they had a workaholics group, but nobody came because there's all working.
That's funny. So
go ahead.
So what was funny was we got one person that's real famous. I'm not even going to go there. I'm talking. The music industry knows this person, and they came. No one knew they were coming. Called at the last minute, got there. Anyway, I got to spend time knowing them. We become good friends. I text this person a lot. I think we've actually been able to help him spiritually. I know we have. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. So I go see the doctor, and this one place does all the testing there. Now you got to remember, this is during COVID.
Oh,
and the city is shut down. This is a city. It is shut down. It's freaky. And the guy with me said, man, he said, normally you can't walk the streets here. He said, this is freaking me out. So the doctor comes to me and he shows me, first of all, they gave me, have you ever taken the little camera? It looks like a clear pill and you swallow it and it takes pictures. Oh, bro, you talk about freaking you out. And the doctor says, okay, let's look at the insides. Okay, see, there's your esophagus. Yeah, it looks good. You don't have the Barrett's esophagus is getting better. Right down here, now there's a hernia right there. It's showing a hernia. I'm like,
I didn't even know I had
it goes into parts that you don't want to go into, okay?
Yeah.
And anyway, there's a funny story behind that. So the doctor says to me, he says, I want you to sit down and pay careful attention to what I'm about to tell you. He said, number one, look at your heart. And he showed my heart. He said, you have 6 blockages at 25% calcium. He said, do you see this one? And there was a blockage here, blockage there, and a blockage there. He says, if these meet, you're going to have a massive heart attack. So, wow. Well, I'll get your attention, because he knew I had children. He said, you want to see your daughter get married one day, right? He says, okay. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. He said, now, your blood pressure is 220 over 140. You should be having strokes. He said, not only do you have heart blockage, you're not getting enough oxygen. You are your stroke level. And let me talk about your A1C. Your sugar is at A1C is 12, close to 13.
Is that diabetes?
Oh,
or is that
that's insulin. That's beyond. It should be 5.5.
You didn't notice because you was working.
I was able to work over top of it.
Yeah.
I get tired, but the adrenaline of working and just going overrode
That's right. Yeah,
my body. So
I've
my
been
body was shutting down. I didn't know it. Okay. So when he said that, and he said, when you came in here, we tested your sugar. It was 360. He says, now here's your options. We're going to get you on certain types of medicine, certain things, and you're going to stay on that, and you're going to change your lifestyle totally. Or in 2 years, they will have your funeral in Tennessee. And man, I said, tell me what I need to do. He said, I want you to talk to me about your stress level. And I said, well, I have a worldwide ministry. And he'd not heard of me, but he heard people out there talking about me and the guy with me. You know, he knows this. In April, 1st of April, we had the highest rated program. We broke Nielsen ratings on three television networks. So God's blessed us there, you understand?
Yeah.
And I said, I do this, I have a TV program, I have a ministry, we do this, and tell me your routine. I have a Bible school, we do this, and I have an OCI, I preach every Tuesday. I do prayer at 12 noon, I do prayer on Thursday, World Prayer, I fly out on Friday. He said, all right. He said, here's my routine. Fly in. Okay, Monday, go to work. Monday through Friday, go to work early, work about 12 hours a day. This was my formal routine. Sometimes 14 hours a day. Then go home, eat lunch, hang out with the family. Fly out on Friday, preach Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, partners meeting Saturday afternoon, 3 services on Sunday, then fly home that night and repeat it. That went on for years.
And write these messages.
And right in between.
I mean, it's not like you.
Can I tell you, it's insane.
Yeah, insane.
And then at the same time that this was going on, we started getting New York Times report that did not like my YouTube videos. They did an actual New York Times article wanting YouTube to take me off for conspiracy theories. We had other papers that were attacking us, and we got attacked by Stephen Colbert, a comedian. Mm-hmm. And what happened, and I'll explain this to people who saw it, I was praying at my prayer center when it was in the old building, and I was praying and praying in the Spirit, just praying in tongues, and I was doing this. Well, they were mocking, making fun, what they did not know. Because let me just say something to you. When the news reports, it's what they're not telling you.
That's right.
It's never what they told you. Because they're wanting to build a story based on certain things they think, or they want you to perceive. It's what they did. So what they did.
It's criminal.
Yeah, what they didn't tell anybody was this. A pastor had contacted me whose wife had cancer. That day he said, Perry, when you're at prayer, text me on your phone when you can call my wife and put it on speaker and pray for her with everybody there at 6:45. I looked at my phone, 6:45. I go there and I'm praying the whole time. I didn't quit praying. So Stephen Colbert took that clip and started mocking me for praying in tongues and looking at my phone. He said, what was he doing? Praying to then a Christian comedian, which I thought was totally
that doesn't even go together,
order.
yeah.
No, a Christian comedian got on and mocked me and made fun of me. Well, that was the beginning. We had 7 news articles come out that were negative on me. So all this, BS crap is going on around me, plus the news reports, plus COVID.
Oh, yeah.
I can't travel nowhere.
Yeah, that screws everybody's head up.
My travel is shut up. So it's like my Catholic friends, now I don't believe in purgatory. My Catholic friends talk about purgatory.
Yeah.
Well, I was in it.
Yeah.
If it exists, I was in it. And so I'm out there, and I'm having to deal with all this in another state, dealing with the physical problems, dealing with how am I going to change my lifestyle. So I said, Lord, how can I do this? Well, the doctors, the counselors, I did 18 hours of individual counseling, 12 hours of group counseling. And the group counseling is a hoot. You ever done group?
Yeah, everybody's crazy but us.
Listen, I'm not even going to tell people some of the things you have to do in group.
Those people are crazy.
Yeah, I would rather do the one-on-one. I remember my counselor was this sweet little blonde-haired lady, and I said to her before we ever started, I said, I just wanted to inform you I'm going to be the weirdest person you've ever dealt with. Well, listen, they've dealt with, I'm not going to name names, but they've dealt with famous people, and I'm just a preacher there, you know, and then they find out that I'm on TV, and that makes you famous, you know, all of a sudden. But anyway, I said, I'm the weirdest person you've ever had doing counseling with. And she said, why? I said, well, I believe in demons. I believe in angels. I saw one time, and I speak in tongues. And she just looked at me and she said, well, that's really not that weird. And I said, why? She said, because I have an aunt back in Georgia that goes to a Pentecostal church. And then this big rocker, and I'm not going to say who it was, this big rocker that was there that I got to know was raised by grandparents in the Assemblies of God. So I say to her, I said, well, look, I called her name. I said, look, I'm the weirdest dude you ever been around. I'm a preacher. You can't preacher. What are you doing here? She said, are you one of the drinking preachers? I said, no. I said, I ain't the drug taking, drinking. I said,
maybe that's what's wrong with you.
I said, I'm a workaholic. And I said, but I'm a weird one, because I'm not ashamed of what I believe. I said, I believe in demons, devils. I believe in angels. I believe in the Holy Spirit. I believe in speaking in tongues. And sick people can get healed. She said, oh, and she cursed. That is so cool. And I will have to tell you this, though. And I would, if I was preaching and we were talking about this, I would probably say this on the right setting. So this is the internet, so whatever. But, there was about 5 people there that were just, had never really, some of them had never been to church, knew nothing about God. One girl said to me, the only thing I know about the Bible is some guy got swallowed in a fish. I said, where'd you hear that from? She said, VeggieTales. She knew nothing. She did not know about the crucifixion of Jesus.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and so I got to minister to him, talk to him about that. We'd eat dinner. I said, hey, let me show you something cool in the Bible. And they just sit around. But what was funny, I can't say, I would never say these words. But what was funny is they would say, holy, and they'd say a word. And I'm just like, well, that's not real holy, really. And they laugh at me, you know. And then I've got and some people don't know this, but it's between me and my daughter. I have a tattoo here that says sunshine. And my daughter has one. It's a daddy-daughter deal. So one day I said, well, y'all got tattoos? I got one. They said, holy, and they said it again, the preach has a tattoo. Dude, that's why we love you. You are so freaking cool. They didn't say freaking. They said something else. So, but I want to tell you, hanging around outright sinners, cussing sinners for a month was the coolest thing I ever did. They absolutely fell in love with me. I'm talking about outright hardcore sinners. And they literally loved me unconditionally. They said, preach. Man, don't beat yourself up. Are you human or not? Are you an alien from another freaking planet? You know, they would look at me and make me laugh. And they'd say, look at us, man. Look how messed up we are. And you loved us unconditionally. We're going to love you unconditionally, preacher. We don't care what, you know. And then the other girl who was raised Pentecostal really, she's good friends with Katy Perry. Very good friends. And so Katy was raised Pentecostal. Norval Hayes sang for Norval Hayes in Cleveland here. But she was talking about how that the things of the Spirit. And next thing I know, in a couple of weeks, they're all talking about God. They're wanting to get baptized in water. So we go out to an ocean and baptize everybody.
So
you're trying to get help.
Yeah, and you're helping them.
And yet the Lord has allowed me to go.
Do you not see these threads?
Oh, totally.
I mean, I see
totally.
them.
And let me tell you why I was so depressed with everything happening and so physically wore out and could not function, brain fog, just everything happening, that God sent those people for me to minister to them.
I see the thread.
To help me. They helped me, man.
Yeah.
I wasn't just, and then the owner of the place said, I have an Old New Testament. Do you mind if I ship some in? We normally don't allow that, but I said, some of the guys want them. I was handing out my Bibles. I was handing out books, signing books. And the owner, whom I won't, again, not tell you the place or the name of the place, but the owner who was raised Catholic, who saw his dad go to Mass and then beat his mom up. Honestly, it was a bad situation. And his dad, by the way, found the Lord recently. But this guy, so far away from Jesus, gets me one day. He says, come to my house. So we go to this really cool area. And if I told you where it was, it's amazing. And we walk 5 miles. We talk. And before I left, he said, I need to talk to you. I talked to him 2 hours about the Lord and about eternity. And he still calls me. He always says, preach, I love you, man. And I'm seeing how, and I want everybody to pay very careful attention to what I'm going to say. In the church, our biggest mistake is making our problems public to the world. And Christians are the world's worst when they don't like you or when they turn on you. They will never remember any gift you've given them. They will never remember anything good you did. They never remember how you helped them in a bad time.
That's almost human nature.
It's total. It is. That's the whole thing. It's carnal.
Yeah.
It's
carnal.
It's the nature.
That's the word.
It's the nature of people to get hurt and offended, and instead of trying to correct it and pray through it, to turn. Okay. The thing that I saw out of these 5 unsaved people was genuine love for me as a person, not as a preacher.
You have to get there first, right?
Yeah. But here's the thing. I realized in my time of counseling, and I'm getting real personal here on some things that maybe I should leave alone. But when this counselor, after 18 hours, sat down with me, and I went through 3 years old, pornography when I was 11 years old, and some things I would never say on here that I went through as a kid that I had actually didn't think it mattered. They said, no, that is what creates this. That's what creates this. That's what creates all this mess.
Those people are trained for that.
Oh, they're good.
Yeah.
If they're good, they're really good.
Right.
And they can pull it together.
Yeah.
This is what no one had ever done for me. Nobody ever put together. So here's what they came up with. Because if I told you the stories I told them, you'd understand it. They said, your entire life from age 4 has been rejection. You've had to always try to prove yourself. And even when you tried to prove yourself, at times my own denomination didn't stand with me. At times pastors that, when I was preaching, I'd preach something different and they would criticize it. Charlie knows this. Charlie has been with me 31 years. If you were to say, what's Perry Stone's life been? It's been absolute rejection from a lot of people because they either don't believe in the rapture, so now you're a heretic. If you ask for an offering, suddenly you're a prosperity preacher. In other words, it's just one thing. It goes on, and then the internet, and then Facebook, and then New York Times.
Yeah.
So then they said, here's where you're at. People who love you as a pastor, or no, as a minister, because of what you help them with. You help them through in their faith. You help them to understand God. You help them to understand spiritual things, and it changes their life.
It's almost they like you for selfish reasons.
You're getting to where I'm going. So in other words, as long as I'm able to bless them, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But they said your situation is I got to be careful here because it's really, I never could get through this where I was. So that's why I don't talk about it. They said you wanted people to like you for Perry the person. And they said when you got out here, because this lady saw the friendships we're developing, you found a group of 5 people that don't even go to church that like you for Perry Stone.
You were just Perry.
Just me. Just goofing off, having
fun. The 5-year-old boy.
Yeah, telling stories, crazy church
Before
stories.
you became Perry Stone.
That's right. Crazy church stories that one guy shouted and lost his britches.
Yeah.
And they're beating the table. And Charlie knows we had some funny things happen. So I'm telling the crazy, I was going to write a book or do a DVD. It can only happen in a Pentecostal church. The Baptists don't have these problems.
Church of Christ don't either.
No, they're normal. They have normal church. Yeah. But Pentecostal churches have some funny stuff happen. So she said to me, this lady did, and she said, your situation is you were always searching for people to love you for Perry. You didn't want them to love you for Perry the preacher. And she says, I almost think you got to the point where you got so bogged down that you wanted to escape, and you just didn't know how to escape. You just didn't know how do you escape from the business? How do you escape from, 16 hours a day? How do you escape? Because if you try to escape, meaning go out, take a drive, let's go up in the mountains, let's go eat. I love the pancake.
That was where you were getting your attaboys. Yeah.
In other words.
And so by working hard, so you just kept working hard.
I kept working hard. But the thing is, though, if I would go out to say, can somebody please get in the car and go with me to eat at the pancake pantry? I don't want to be by myself.
Yeah.
Well, there would be people, but, my wife was homeschooling for 24 years. And I say, baby, you got to go. Honey, get somebody else to go. Ask somebody at the office, whatever. But the thing was, through the counseling, I realized that I had too much on me. So the root thing was get rid of your cares. Perry Stone, how are you going to get rid of the weight? Well, I'm over there thinking, boy, I've got OCI. I have a 500, 700 people to come every Tuesday night. I have to get a new message every week. I got the prayer thing at the Global
And a family.
Yeah, but
don't forget that.
No, it's just, I've got cares. I got TV programs.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? So the Lord spoke to my spirit again. And I'm at a place, and I'm at a beautiful place with. Anyway, I'm not going to describe it, but I'm at a place where I can go out in the night with the full moon, and ocean waves are there, and it's just beautiful. And I'm praying, and I said, "Tell me what to do." So the Lord spoke to me, and He said, "You can keep all your facilities. I gave them to you. I blessed you to have them. Give the school completely to Dr. Cutshaw. Sign everything over to him, and you just teach there when you want to. But let him run the school. Not you and him run it, let him run it." So I said, okay,
Makes
I can do that. Now, there's a part of you that it's tough because it's your baby.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It would be like you building your dream house.
And then somebody finished
and
it.
then, and then saying, well, y'all go ahead, I'm gonna move, y'all can take the house. It is psychologically, if you let it affect you, it does. Then deep in your spirit, you're so peaceful about it because it was the right thing to do. So OCI was blood, sweat, and tears. How many years did it take to build that? 4 years, and then building from nothing into the fellowship.
OCI is not a church.
It was never intended to be, but it became a fellowship. We had small groups and classes and everything. Now, if I'm 70 years of age and want to stay in one place and pastor or preach, that's a different story. But I'm an evangelist, see. So here I am trying to balance a local ministry with that. So I was out of state again at a hotel, and I said, "Lord, what do we do with OCI? I just can't. I can't."
Because you'd already determined to give that to.
I had to because of the pressure.
Yeah.
And I know some of the people that have attended there do not understand this, what I did. They really don't. They sincerely don't. Others are very excited about it. So the Lord said, "Give it to Karen because it's about youth. It's about the next generation. It's about the great revival coming to young people."
Karen Wheaton.
And she's the only one that can do this. And she has a heart for this area. I said, wow. And I really got excited. Well, her husband happened to be on my board. So I called him and I said, "I'm going to tell you what the Lord spoke to me. The Lord spoke to me that we're going to hold on to, we're going to keep the land and the facilities. I may build something later, who knows. Sure. But that building that sits there, I want to turn it over to Karen's ministry for you to build Ramp Cleveland, not a church." And he said, "Well, it won't be a church." I said, "It's a movement. It's a revival center. It's a refreshing center. It's a place where a generation can go. We have older and young people coming, they do." Well, we announced it, and it was, honestly, I'll be honest, it's a shock. It's a sudden shock to everybody who's been there. We've had people who's moved there. If we have everybody there at one time, we have about 700 people, which is great. But a lot of the older people moved there to hear me preach prophecy, and that's the only reason they moved there. Well, that was not the intention of that building being built, never from the beginning. That building was built because my son almost died of a drug overdose in this town. And I was in an intensive care, it would be ICU, I guess, with him, monitoring his heart. And I told the devil, "I'm going to make you pay." And I built that facility to have meetings to bring young people in to see them saved and baptized in the Holy Spirit and so on. That's why that building exists. And we had great Warrior Fest going on, but it just wasn't doing what it was supposed to. So I said to Rick, who's Karen's husband, "You've got to take this." He said, "Perry, we can't do anything unless we pray." He said, "What are your people going to think?" I said, "This is a point that if this is the Lord, the people that are supposed to stay will stay, and you'll build from there, and the ones that's supposed to go will go." That's how I feel about it. And she did a lot of praying and came up in June. We officially handed everything to her, and she says, he said, "Now, Karen, this is your facility. We are now rampers." My wife and I, we call ourselves Charlie, we're rampers.
Now you're a member.
Yeah, I'm a member now, really. Now, she's told me, if you ever have a word, you can preach it any time.
I saw you on YouTube on there this week.
Oh,
or was that?
Oh, that was this past Tuesday. Oh,
yeah,
it was
very
heavy, man.
It was heavy.
Oh, we were having
You were on fire.
Oh, I felt it. But do you know the last time I actually could preach like that?
I don't know.
Maybe a year and a half. I mean, literally free, totally free, pressure lifted.
T.L. Larry had nothing on you.
So you heard T.L.
I heard, yeah.
So what has basically happened, and I'm sharing this with the community because what I want to do is try to dispel rumors. And they just happen in a town like this. And when you're national or internationally known, you get more of them than anybody else. And people say, I heard. And it's so funny because I will promise you that 90% of the time, as this man will tell you, what they heard was not even close, really.
Right.
And so this is the reason why I wanted to share this with people, because word got out that it was a hostile takeover, and word got out that the board took over the ministry. No, I submitted one of the greatest friends, he's Mr. Cleveland in my eyes, is Gary Sears. He's the head of my board. And Gary directed all of this. They had wisdom. They used wisdom. They used the discretion. They did everything. They did everything right. They did everything. They said Perry will do everything as the Bible says, not just what we request of him. He will do what the Bible says. It said to make sure he does not fall back into the routines and the habits and the nonstop work. He has to have an accountability team of ministers that he answers to every month. Just had a meeting with them. And they can ask me any question. Nothing is off the board. Literally, and they will. They will say, here's 5 questions we want to ask you, and you have to answer them truthfully. Then the last question is, did you lie about any of these questions? I just laughed and beat the table the other day when they said that. They said, the only thing we ask of you is if we ask you a question that is uncomfortable, for you to answer it. Said that's what accountability is. So what I feel like is the Lord has set me aside 6 months, which, can I tell you this? I will say this, if I had a Bible, I'd put my hand on the word of the Lord. Greatest 6 months of my life, hardest 6 months of my life. It's a dual track, extremely painful in some areas. The worst pain, not physically, emotionally that I've ever been through. Other side of the track, the most liberating time of my life. I can't even begin to tell people. They'll say, how you doing? I'd say, if I did any better, I'd be in heaven. And it sounds crazy to have gone through what I've gone through and say that. But you have to know the feeling of all the pressure and the stuff that built up being released. And basically it all began with me, I don't remember what was it, April, early May, before I went to this place for 30 days at a prayer meeting. I just got up one night, couldn't sleep, and the Lord spoke to me and said, go to ISO and pray. And I went and had the greatest and scariest prayer meeting with God I've ever had in my life. If there's such a thing as, I'm not trying to sound sensational here, but about an hour into it, I felt a presence come in there that was not of this world, wasn't evil. And I was on the floor praying, and I said, God, if that's you, I don't have my phone here, but I said, God, if that's you, give me a sign. I said, this is just one of those times I need it. And he's seen the pictures. I'm in the dark. It's like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Been praying 2 hours. And I have 4 screens on a pole here and 4 on a pole there that you have to turn a switch, right, in the back to turn them on. No one in that place but me. And when I said, give me a sign, I'm laying on my back with a Bible on my head, just crying, weeping, praying before God. All those screens clicked on with prayer requests by themselves in the dark. And my hair stood up. And
they were up too.
They came on.
Yeah.
They can't come on. That's my point. They literally cannot. You have to turn if there's nobody there. Boom, boom, boom. I heard a noise. Boom, boom. And the room started lighting up. I said, dear God, that's his request. And the moment I said my final amen at exactly 5 minutes after 5, boom, 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 they all went off by themselves. Another thing that happened, I'll get a little bit of criticism because people will think, oh, that's really weird. When you get to be 61, you don't care what they think. I mean, to be honest with you, you're weird, you're weird. If you're great, you're great. If you're mean, you're mean. You just learn to bypass people's opinions. Yeah. You just really do. When people, and I'll say this for someone that might be watching, when people go through any kind of a crisis, it could be the death of a loved one, it could be the death of a child, it could be
anything that they see as a crisis.
It
may not even be a crisis, but to them it is. To them it is.
If you will remember that God said, I won't leave you or forsake you. You got to hold on to that. And I'm telling you, I've been there. I have really, really been there. When you get overwhelmed, and I mean, I was getting hit every day from a different direction. Every day. day after day after day. Another piece of drama, another set, another lie somebody had told. It just never ended.
You can have all of that, and then to get a flat tire, and it be the camel that breaks it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
or the straw that breaks the camel's
really,
back.
because
it was the flat tire
it pushes you. It pushes you to the edge.
Over the edge.
So going away was.
That's where you were.
Yeah, and going away was the best thing that I did at this point. At that point, I should say, because I started realizing things about me that I never put together. I started realizing the rejection thing had played a role in a lot of things in my life. I started realizing I had wanted people to like me as a person, not as a ministry. The thing I said a moment ago that I want people to hear is that Christians have to start loving each other unconditionally.
I'm not sure if that's going to happen.
You know what? I hate to say it.
I'm not sure if that's going to happen.
I hate to say it, but until we get to this major U.S. crisis where everything is doomed and gone, maybe then we'll start getting along.
They say there's no atheists in the foxhole. I'm not sure if there's any friends unless you're in the foxhole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, really. And so they're going to have to learn to do it, or either teach this next generation to. They got to just love people unconditionally. And the third thing is, please understand that if God is God, He repairs, strengthens, and restores people. If He doesn't, let's quit. Let's just give up on this whole thing.
Let's just go ahead.
And the difference between one person and another person is, this person over here may have done something and got it under the blood and moves on. This person over here did it and got caught.
Yeah.
Okay? Somebody said, well, David would have never repented. He didn't repent till he got caught. I said, no, you wouldn't either, sir.
No.
And the guy just looked at me and said, think about it. We said, well, I guess you're right. Yeah. So we need to quit over judging and over evaluating things and just take the person at the value of someone who loves God, someone who attends the house of God, may not be the same denomination. I get tired of people arguing over a doctrine. Well, I don't believe in healing. Well, die. I mean, if you don't believe in it.
Wasn't it?
But you know what I'm saying? No, I do, but people still die when I pray.
Who was it told Saul when he was killing all the Christians? He said, we're all on the same team, basically. Was it Gamaliel?
Yeah, well, yeah, he pretty much said, look, if you fight these people and if it's not of God, don't worry about it. It'll go away.
Yeah.
If it is of God, you can't fight it. So you might as well quit.
That's my point.
Yeah, that's it. So in other words, whatever background we are, whatever church we attend, whatever we're trying to do, we're actually in this thing together.
We're on the same team.
And we're not enemies. We are fighting Satan. And I do believe that there comes a time in everybody's life, in the book of Revelation, it talks about the hour of testing which comes to the earth. And I believe there's three kinds of testings. Everybody, all of us guys in this room and people watching, there's three you're going to go through. One is called the common testing. There's no testing taken you but such as common. So everybody has stuff that everybody deals with. Everybody has it. Sometimes you got to deal with it. Then there is a season of testing. When Satan tempted Jesus in Luke 4, it said, Satan departed for a season. And that Greek word means until another appropriate time. So in other words, he was going to leave him alone for a while but come back later. That's what that means. Then in Revelation 3, it says there's an hour of testing that comes. Now, everybody watching me will experience all three of those somewhere in your life. Your common testing is what you'll go through every now and then, and you'll say, hey, we're good with it, and then your temper flares up again. God, why did I do that? Or why did I say that? And then you'll go a couple months, and then your temper flares up. That's common. Having a temper, being oppressed, feeling depressed, feeling down, living in a lot of grief because somebody died. These are common things. Seasonal testings can be just the fiery darts of the enemy that Paul talked about in Ephesians, that I've talked to people, for example, that really received help over a habit like smoking. They didn't want to smoke. They got help. But then a year goes by, and all of a sudden it just comes back, and they get overwhelmed. Or drug addicts can do this, where they say, I'm not going to do that again. And they'll go a spell, and then a trigger. They call them in counseling. They call them triggers. Yeah. The trigger comes that triggers it, and they haven't learned how to deal with it, or how to replace that trigger.
Or recognize the trigger.
Recognize what causes it. And so next thing you know, they're in a cycle.
Yeah.
The hour of testing is I'm going to say it this way, all hell breaks loose. For some people, it is the death of a child or a grandbaby, the death of a loved one unexpectedly. It can be a sudden divorce that you didn't see coming. It can be a terrible report from the doctor where they said, well, you're dying with cancer. You know, that's your hour.
Yeah.
This is where the rubber meets the road, and you got to say to yourself, so I think I've been through the hour. I hope I only have one.
Yeah.
I hope my hour's come and go. No, really, everything hit me at one time. And I believe it was two things. We don't want to ever overemphasize an attack of Satan, because a lot of times what is attacking you is coming from people who are Christians, or it's coming from people who claim to be Christians. But we do know Satan spoke to Peter, and Jesus had to rebuke him and say, get behind me, Satan. So just because you're a believer doesn't mean that you won't say or do the wrong thing at times.
No.
But the part of it is just an all-out, pre-planned, premeditated attack of the enemy that uses every circumstance to pull it together, weave it together as one assault. But the second thing, and this is what I want people, man, I feel the anointing right here. The second thing I want people to understand is nothing we ever go through takes God by surprise. God already knew what my blood pressure, A1C, he already knew all that before the doctor ever told it. And he'd been trying to deal with me.
He thought you were controlling.
No, yeah, but he thought, I mean, my wife would tell me, Charlie would tell Perry shouldn't eat that. And I'm just like, I'm so busy, I've been paying no attention. Mm-hmm. And really in my heart, I'm saying, man, I need to get that under control. But then what do? You go home and eat a piece of cheesecake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stupid.
Twinkie.
Yeah, no, it's really crazy.
Yeah.
And you know,
Doritos.
Then you sit there and you get convicted. It's like, man, why in the world did I do that? That was crazy. So you'll do that in life. Sure. But then here's the thing about an hour of testing that you have to remember. Many times, God will allow, I'm going to say it this way because this is how I felt it. He will allow you to be really tested. He will allow even persecution to come. He will allow assault to come. He will allow misinformation. He does all of this.
Just like he did Job. Yeah,
but he does it for this reason. The enemy is after your voice and your integrity as a minister. He doesn't want people to hear God. If God's going to give me, and he's already showed me this, a major revelation that I'm about to present to the whole world. He said, this is the biggest thing I've ever showed you. And I don't even know what it is. Well, what Satan says is, shut his voice down so nobody will want to listen to him. Shut his voice down so they're not, or get him physically where he can't preach, put him in a hospital somewhere. So basically, that's his assignment. God's assignment is to prune the branches. Mm-hmm. That's all of us. Because he said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to chastise you and bring this to you, and I'm going to start cutting stuff that's there for one reason, so you'll bear more fruit. Because I had a vision a while back, and it was a vision. I had my eyes closed, but I was awake, and I saw these trees. It was so cool. And I'm just sitting there saying, wow, I'm having a vision. Mm-hmm. And I saw this green tree, and it just went, and it got double green. Then I saw another tree, and the leaves. I didn't see fruit, but I saw the leaves. And it just started growing. And God says, that's what I mean when I prune something. Because my wife's sister went to California. Now, none of us drink alcohol at all, but she went to the vineyards to learn about vines and vineyards and grapes because she was curious about it. Yeah. So she's walking through, and there's a tour guide talking about how they plant them, how long it takes. Mm-hmm. She started noticing ribbons, red ribbons tied on certain ones. Some had one, some had two, some had three. One was really covered, and some had none. She said, can I ask you a question? What about the ribbons? And he said, I was waiting for someone to ask me that. He said, here's what we noticed during the harvest season. The branches where you see the red ribbons produce no fruit, or they produce very little. If we don't cut them off and trim them, they will sap the life out of the good branches. So what we're going to do when the season comes right, we have to wait a certain season, we're going to trim these. And that's what Jesus said, I am the vine and you're the branches. Mm-hmm. Bottom line through all of this is, and for the people who may be watching me is, don't despise trouble. Because it may be the enemy, it may be a rebellious child.
It may be the plan.
It may be the plan. And
you follow me?
That's what most people miss.
That's what they miss.
Now, when it's over, because I've gone through 6 months of sabbatical and I look back in retrospect, there are some things I would have done different to prevent me from getting to that place. But you learn. This is where you learn from your past. Okay? The greatest lesson a human learns is to learn their lesson the first time.
Lots of luck.
But never try to never repeat what got you in the situation. Mm-hmm. Like if I have sugar diabetes, I kind of know it was my lifestyle of how I ate that got me in that situation, and my lack of exercise. Well, at least I got an office now that I can go up the steps 20 times a day, so I'm getting some exercise. I got a Bowflex machine too, and I get so tired of passing it by and looking at it. It just makes me tired looking at it.
Put your hat on.
Yeah, but sometimes I'll just say, you know what? I got to get up. I got to do 50 reps on the Bowflex, and I'll just go over there, just not dressed like this, and I'll just take my time and do that, get the blood circulating, and go back and sit down. The old days, I ate lunch sitting down at my seat at my laptop and never got up except to go to the restroom. Mm-hmm. That was a mistake. Mm-hmm. So now I've learned my lesson, and now I'm feeling that after 6 months of being off, I'm starting to feel, and Pam said to me, she says, now Perry, it's coming back on you. You be careful, because I've got a 2-hour outline and 2 teachings that I want to do tomorrow on audio. Well, that's a lot of my voice. But I've got to pace myself. It doesn't have to be done. I don't have to do that many. In the old day, it was like, I got to get this all done. I got to get it done now. And I got to move to the next thing. That's how I thought. Yeah. But my thinking has been changed. Counseling has helped change it. My wife has helped change it. My office has helped change it. And the thing is, I don't plan on ever going back to a style of flying out Friday, Saturday, Sunday, come back Monday through Friday, because I've learned that social media, I can put a YouTube video out, and I've got YouTube videos with 500,000, 800,000 views. I have a Facebook post that I did that has 1.8 million views on Facebook, or Perry Stone Facebook.
That's a lot of views.
It's a lot of views. And so I've learned I don't have to kill myself to reach people. The technology today has enabled us, just like what you're doing here, enable you to speak to people and share your heart or your message with them without, renting the building and doing the advertising. You know what I'm saying?
It's taking the real estate out.
It's a different
and the gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
But don't you think a lot of this is God's plan? I mean, you talk about you went to buy that building from. This is just 2 examples. You went to buy that building at Lee, and you were going to give it to the Wheaton lady. Mm-hmm. Well, at the same time, God might have been fulfilling Paul Kahn's needs,
He did.
your needs, and the people that were selling the building.
Yeah.
So it all works out.
It helped everybody.
So I'm not sure that anything we really do controls our destination and God's direction.
If we just pray, Lord, every day let your will be done.
And try our best.
And you might move out of it, but I'm going to tell you something about the will of God. One way or the other, this is my personal belief, especially if you have a assignment. And you can have a business assignment, not just a ministry assignment. So I'm going to make that clear. If you have an assignment, one way or the other, I describe it this way. Let me hold my hands up. This is the best way to go, point A to point B, straight line. Just flow, next day, flow, and next day, and I got there. Well, we got it done. We got it built. We did that ministry assignment. We reached that nation. We got that new TV contract to reach 10 million more
You're
people.
in Israel.
Yeah, exactly. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So we go from A to B.
My wife watches you every Sunday morning, but go ahead.
Well, what happened to you?
Yeah. I'm watching you. Well, I watch you.
We're going to get him.
I'll watch you.
We're going to get him. Somebody told me, they said, you're just too deep. And I've tried to, I do study deep, but sometimes I try to make it as simple as possible. But I've had people laugh at me and say, you lost me on that one, preach.
But you hadn't lost me point A to point B.
Point A to point. That's the way you want to go. Sometimes we don't. We have a detour. We have uninvited detours and self-created detours. Self-created is a decision we made, people we hung around, for kids dating the wrong person, and it just really got you off the track. So what happens is, in the will of God, Romans chapter 8 says that when we pray with the Spirit, that we will pray the mind of God, that God's will is going to be done, because all things work together for the good of them who love God and are called according to His purpose. But the verses before that deal with praying that through. So once you prayed it through, whatever happens, you can say, you know what? I know this is crazy, but this has got to be the will of God, one way or the other. But what happens now we're at A and B, so instead of going straight, we have to loop. We've looped, we've gone around. This is like the road that has the wreck on it, and they've taken you the back roads. We've hit some back roads, but eventually, He's going to get you back here.
And I think God's helping other people that's got other problems doing that.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot of times, no, it's just like when I went And this, if you missed it, you'll have to go back and listen to what I was saying about, when I'm going to be gone 30 days. Never been gone 30 days. And had nobody I knew. See, I have a little bit, it's a socially, what did the counselor say? A social disorder where I'm awkward with people I don't know. And people would never know that, but I'm very awkward. And a little bit of Asperger autism in the social area. Now, in other areas, the IQ, and I'm not bragging, is almost genius level. It's ridiculous,
And a lot of hair.
Biblically, it's real ridiculous because we've taken tests on that. I think out of a lot of... that went right over my head and hit the wall somewhere.
Well, those things are important to some people.
But
go ahead.
What was I saying, CD? I got messed up on that one.
Socially awkward.
Okay.
Yeah, socially awkward.
And so for me to have to go to a place and talk to strangers and tell them personal details is very hard. I mean, it's hard for most people. It's very hard. It's double hard for me. And then in a place I've never been, not knowing what it's like, who are the people, because I would rather shut myself in a room and not even go out if I'm around people I don't know. Am I right, Charlie? He knows.
Well, you're wore out from you're preaching all the time.
And I just, so there I am holding on, and then my wife looks at me and she says, how do you know, Perry, how do you know that when you go to this place, God is not going to send somebody that only you could reach?
And it's obvious.
And when I got there and it was over and I was leaving, I realized, I said, oh my goodness. One, and this little story here, and these are again more personal. I'll leave a lot of the details out. But we were in at this particular place, we had our little group counseling thing going on. And honestly, some of the group stuff was just weird. And it borderlined on some things, but I still participated when I could. And they did yoga. I said, no, I am not yoga in with anybody. Yeah. Oh, preach. No, I'm just not. That ain't me. And not, because in even meditation, I'm not into blanking the mind out. And that's just me. I'm not telling people out there that if you do it with music and Christian music and, sitting back and chilling out and just thinking about the mountains, I'm not saying that.
Just not your thing.
It's not my thing. So there was a few things, and they laugh at me and we'd go on after. But we had a lady that came in, probably she was in her 40s. I didn't know who she was, and she was on a TV screen, and we're sitting around. And there is a counselor there, and there's I won't give their names. 1, 2, 3, 4 of us there. She's the 5th person, and she's in a room because they test you for COVID, and you have to wait 2 days in a room. You can't even go out.
God.
Yeah. This is tough. And in this state, they're really into this. They ain't gonna let you out. So I'm sitting there, and we're introducing ourselves to this lady. And I introduced myself. I said, I'm Perry Stone. And when I said Perry Stone, because in my mind, where she was from was St. Louis. I'd preached there. And I just wonder if this is somebody that knows me. So if they are, I have to explain I'm not a drug addict or an alcoholic. I just did. That was just me. I didn't want anybody saying, God, the preacher, man, he must have had a real... So I said, and by the way, I'm not here because of alcohol or drugs. I'm a stupid workaholic, but that's my drug. And everybody said, it's the truth, the preacher. But so by that time I had this bunch watching my TV program because my TV program came on out there. I said, y'all want to see me preach on TV? Blank yeah. That's what they would say. God, I'm not helping these people
not
at all.
Not the normal audience.
No, it's not the normal. And then they'd ask me questions. So it was so cool because I preached on the tribulation. Okay, man, when is this going to happen? And I sat there for 1 hour. And to me, that fulfilled me because that's what I do.
That's what you did.
But I wasn't under pressure to do it.
You were in your comfort zone.
I was like, man, I'm chilled. I'm with a bunch of sinners, man, that want to be taught. It don't get no better. Look, if I had my way, put me in a room with 50 hardcore, pot smoking, I know this isn't going to make sense to some of you, Harley riding sinners that want to hear me talk to them, than 5,000 Christians. Because with 5,000 Christians, I'm just preaching to the choir. And I mean that this changed my mind.
Well, there's a lot of truth to what you're saying.
This changed my mind dealing with these people. I'd much rather have a table full of guys. I don't care if they're smoking and drinking and smoking pot. I would rather sit in there and tell them about Jesus to try to help them.
Than to preach to the choir. That's where they get that saying.
Yeah,
preach to the
choir.
choir.
To the choir. And don't get me wrong. I have Christian partners. I have many friends. I have people we've reached and helped. I love the Christian people.
You're thinking,
I'm just telling you, having been there now and watching the hunger that's in these people that never get taught the word, just give me sinner people any day. Honestly, if God called me and said, you're preaching to sinners and you're going to reach all of them the rest of your life, I'd be the happiest man on the planet.
In reality,
He might tell me that while I'm sitting here.
And the reality is that's the way you started.
Yes, and that's who you need to be reaching anyway.
Yeah.
But they're so offended at church people because of how church people treat each other. We blow it with sinners because we're going to run a table talk about the pastor. I tell you what, that pastor. I tell you that music, that Perry Stone.
Yeah.
And here's a sinner person, and you're wrecking it for them. And they're just going to sit there and say, yeah, look how, yeah, right. Yeah, you love me? Really? You going to treat me like this when I get in your family? So,
what is it the Bible says about they're the ones that need to be healed?
Yeah, well, they said, Jesus was healing people. He said, physician, heal thyself. And they said, they that are whole don't need one.
Don't need it.
They don't need it. These are
it.
the people that need it the worst, you know.
This is your calling, though, being a preacher. When did you know it? At 11?
No, at 11, I received what Pentecostals term the baptism of the Holy Spirit at a youth camp, which really, what that does is the presence of the Lord that comes in your spirit or inside of you alerts you more to the things of God. You know, you become more interested in reading the Bible. You become more interested in hanging around with people who.
But you don't just know the Bible. I read the Bible. I know the Bible. But you really study the Bible.
Well, I have, and this is no exaggeration, I'm going to go conservative. It's more than this. I have 170,000 hours of Bible study.
What's the attraction?
That's all I do. Learning something I didn't know. I'm glad you asked that.
But why the Bible?
Because it's the only thing out there that can, first of all, bring people into eternity in a right relationship with God. It's the only thing that can help people when they're really about to end it all. So it's the fact that the Word is so powerful to change people.
But if you are selling something, you're selling something that it's just a belief.
But think about what I'm going to say. Think about this, okay? If we believe what it says, which I do, of course, if we believe what the Word says, let's talk to people who criticize preachers for having a nice house or a car or, a nice... Let's just talk about this. A pastor friend in Hawaii was getting ready to have surgery, heart surgery. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'll have to make the numbers up. So if the salaries are incorrect, just bear with me because I don't know what they actually are. I do have the original paper somewhere. So he asked this pastor, he's a real big man out in Hawaii. He said, Pastor, I want to ask you something. How much is it worth if you have a brain tumor for a brain surgeon to go in your head, take that tumor out and give you 20 more years? Wow, I think it's great. He said, well, $450,000, good brain surgeon. And again, these are just random numbers. But this conversation happened. He said, Pastor, what is it worth to a man or woman that a heart doctor can go in, remove the blockages and give them 25 more years with their family? I don't know. It's tremendous. He said, $350,000 a year. And again, using these numbers. Then he looked at the pastor and he said something. The pastor said he'll never forget this. He said, what's a man worth that can keep a soul out of hell?
Everything.
And priceless. Mm-hmm. And the doctor said, never be embarrassed of God blessing you for what you do, because your work deals with eternity, while everybody else making money or having things on earth only deals with temporal things. That'll pass. And that preacher started crying. And so for people who want to criticize a minister, what is the value of that man preaching to a youth conference and your granddaughter who is totally bound up in an alternative lifestyle coming to know Jesus? What's it worth to you? What's it worth to that grandson who's a drug dealer, drug addict, been in and out of jail? What is it to you, for a man or woman for that case, at let's say a ramp or a Perry Stone Warrior Fest, come into the pulpit and you watch that grandson run down to an altar under conviction and he throws the drugs away and never picks them up again? What's it worth to you to see those kids that are in rebellion end up somewhere called to the mission field and they end up being, what's it worth to you? And the answer, you can't put a price on it. Mm-hmm. So never be critical of people who have dedicated their life their heart, their life, who get up early and pray for you, who stay up late and pray for you, who get a word from God, and instead of going out and eating lunch, skip lunch to get that word. Never, ever open your mouth and say anything negative. Because I do see people at times who will come under an offense, and once they do, they have nothing good to say. Don't do it. Keep your mouth shut.
That's hard. The Bible says no man bridleth the tongue.
Yeah. Well, it says if you can't bridle your tongue, your religion's in vain. So what good? And Paul said in Corinthians, if I speak in tongues and feed the poor and die a martyr, but if I don't love my brother, I'm a bunch of noise. I told a church one time, boy, they were fighting each other. I got up and said, y'all ain't nothing but a bunch of noise. You're a bunch of hypocrites. You're a bunch of noise. And I read that verse in Corinthians and said, if you can't love each other, Paul said, you're a sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal. All you're doing is making noise. Of course, I'm not that bold anymore to say that to people. So,
how come?
But you're older, and it's like, you know what? These people are crazy. I'm not going to be able to help them. they're stuck in their ways, so whatever. No, you do. You get to the point, it's like, who gives a rip? You know, you really do. I mean, in my earlier days, I was so concerned about this person talking about me and this bad email and this person disagreed and this person. And you, after 45 to 46 years of getting those emails, you just learn that's their opinion, and opinions are like noses. Everybody's got one. So don't worry about their opinion. And you'll have to learn that if you ever do anything in life, or if you ever do anything of notoriety, or go back to business, if you ever do a business where you have to deal with people, do things, build things, sell things, whatever it might be, you will learn that you can be as nice to people as you want to, and not everybody is going to be nice back.
But don't you think God controls all this anyway?
Well, people, let me say this. He does for those who follow him that will listen. But at the same time, I think there's people that just have no real relationship with the Lord. And they are what we call fleshly or carnal. And they don't know how to work with people. They don't know how to be honest. And I do know this, that and I don't know, who I may be talking to. I get to speak at big churches sometimes to business people. Some of them are multimillionaires. And I said, the thing that you have to remember in business is always, always be completely honest. Even if it costs you to make something right, always be honest. I said, because here's the deal. Let's go to restaurants. A statistic that I found out was that if you have a bad experience at a restaurant, 11 other people will be told. So now you have 11 that will not go to that restaurant. But those 11 will tell a person. Now you've increased it. And that's how restaurants go out of business in a town. At first you see cars, and there's half the cars, and there's no cars, and there's a for sale sign. Because somebody got food poisoning, the food was awful, the chef
found a hair.
The chef was not a good chef, and it happens. Yeah. The same is true with, the same is actually true with being in ministry. When 7 people, let's talk about a church. When you are going to a church and you just have a bad experience, they will tell 7 other people. Not 11, but 7. 7 end up hearing about it. Mm-hmm. And so you do your best to make things right, because I have dealt with people in business that may not be as fast as someone else, but good Lord, are they honest. Mm-hmm. I had a guy, I'll tell you a story, and he doesn't live around here because I would never tell a story about someone here to hurt their business. Mm-hmm. Lives in Atlanta, and our builder of our house, which was 10 years ago, maybe longer, came and put stucco on the house. Well, it wasn't the builder's fault, but the man from, this works, and I got samples. Did you know in a year my house started cracking, all the stucco started falling off? And all we did was call him and say, would he make it right? And he refused to do it. So guess what? Right. No one will ever get business from me. Yeah.
More than 11
They'll
people.
Call me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I could get on YouTube and there'd be 300,000 people. Yeah. But I'm not going to do that. Yeah. I would never go into that area of battling a person just because I was done wrong. Now, another guy comes along and says, well, let me, it cost us thousands of dollars. And it was a new house. That was that. The insurance didn't pay.
Yeah.
So we had to get all our savings out and do this to fix our house. Yeah. You've been there.
Yeah.
You know. So this guy says,
I had
this
never
is
done that. But
this is a new type. I really think it'll work. And so he did it. And we don't even have a crack. And that's been 10 years ago. So somebody in our neighborhood wanted stucco. And you know what we did?
It referred to
We
the
said, you
second
know what?
person.
We told Ray Garner, who's a friend, that guy who did this, check him out because it is really. So now here's what the guy did. Because he did the right thing, word of mouth is going to help his business and make him money. And in a community this size, it's very important that you always treat people honestly. Now here's my example. Many years ago, Charlie knows all these stories. Charlie's been with me long enough.
Charlie knows where the body's buried.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, pass me that water. He knows where the body's buried.
He knows everything. That's right. So he'll remember this. We did a tour, and I did a lot of personal work for this man who owned at that time the largest Israel, Jordan, Middle East tour company in the United States. Took Hal Lindsey, TBN, just all these people. And I did a lot of work for him. I did layout work on the side, and I did T-shirts. I did design. I mean, it was who knows how many hours. But back then I was traveling, so I'd spend the whole 4 or 5 hours the next day for. I wrote for him. He owed us $14,000 total. Now we're talking about work over 6 months. We get to Israel, and I tell him I'm going to change tour companies, and he refuses to pay me for the work. Refuses. Didn't give me a penny. And I looked at him and I said, let me tell you something. I said, first of all, I did that and worked very hard, and you're not fair, and I know enough about Scripture. Here's what's going to happen to you. Your company's going to go under. I said, because I'm a servant of the Lord foremost. And he looked at me and laughed. I mean, he thought I was playing the game. I said, just mark it down. I said, you cannot mistreat someone the way you're doing and try a manipulative game and get by with it. So just remember, you're going under. And I walked away from the table and I didn't see him again. In 6 months, he was going under. In 2 years, he totally bankrupted and lost everything and died of cancer. Now, I'm not saying God let him die of cancer because of me. Cancer can be caused by stress. So I'm not adding that in there, but I'm telling you that was the end result. And he never made it right, but I forgave him because I felt like, Lord, this is so serious that he will answer to you at the judgment seat. So what I want to do is release this man so he does not have to answer for that. I want to forgive him so that when he stands there, you won't say, you cheated and lied and stole money. I want that gone. That's like Jesus at the cross said, forgive them, they don't know what they do. And Stephen said while they're stoning him, don't lay this sin to their charge. What did he mean? Don't let them have to answer for this. I'm willing to go. So that's where the Bible says, it's good teaching right there, brother. Write this down. The Bible says, whoever sins you remit, they're remitted to them, and whoever you retain, they retain. Now that's not, for the Pope or the priest to forgive your sins. That simply means that I am able to release you from what you've done to me if it's wrong. And if I want to retain it, I'll retain it, but that's not a good thing to do. And that's why.
What happens when you retain it?
Well, Jesus says that your own forgiveness is in danger. If you do not forgive your brother, then he doesn't forgive you.
Forgive us our sins as we forgive those.
That's right. That's right. So in other words, he put that stipulation in a very strict commandment so that we would be willing to do to others what he did for us. And so going back to this man, I turned him over to the Lord. And another thing is this: if a person has truly, willfully conspired to do evil against you, and they don't eventually come to you and repent, if you can release them of that, then vengeance becomes God's. God will then take it in his hand to say, he forgave you, but you broke my rules and you broke my law, and I can't let you think you got by with that. Because if you think you can treat them that way and get by with it, then you'll treat that one that way, and you'll do it again. So that's why God allows a huge chastisement or judgment to come on some people, because he knows if they don't get judged by him, they'll do it again. It'll become a pattern. They'll repeat it. And it'll be very, very dangerous for them in eternity if they do.
So the bottom line is forgive people.
And it's hard. You know, and I know, we all know, there are times, I take an example. You know, being in construction, you know how this works, that sometimes you have people that will owe a bill and they either can't pay it or they just won't pay it. It happens all the time.
Or just haven't paid it.
Haven't paid it. But they know they have to.
Yeah.
And they got money.
Yeah.
But they're going to use it on other things. So I have a friend of mine who happens to be the family that raised my wife in Alabama, Jerry and Charlotte Skelton. And he's a businessman, a contractor, builds buildings, usually builds houses for people. Came to me one time in a revival I was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or Northport. He says to me, he says, what would you do in my case? So what's your case? He said, I have a man that can pay me, and he owes me, I want to say it was about $2,800. Okay, now for a big guy, that's not a great amount, but for a little guy, that's huge, feeding his family. And he said, he saw me the other day. He said, I said, you owe me that. He said, it's my opinion. You probably overcharged me anyway, so I'm not paying it. That was his excuse. Well, he did the work, never got paid. And I thought for a moment, and I said, Lord, give me wisdom for Jerry what would you do? What should I tell him?
Because he had asked you.
Yeah. And I said, Jerry, let me tell you what you need to do. I want you to write this man a letter, and I want you to say this to him. Mr. So-and-so, I'm a Christian, and I do believe that you owe me the money, and you've seen the work we did, etc. You know, just one more time, explain it and say this. But if you can go to bed the rest of your life with this on your conscience and one day stand before God, you never have to pay me. And I said, sign it. Don't ask for any more payment. Just say it that way. The guy delivered a check to him the next He did. Jerry said, you're not going to believe this. He was shaking when he gave it to me. He said, man, when you said that to me, he said, I realized I could really get in trouble one day. Seriously, in trouble. Because I just decided I didn't want to pay you. He said, man, take this check and get it out of my hand. And it was a real simple letter.
Yeah.
But Jerry really was willing to let it go because he just didn't want to. But you don't. The one thing that I think not that we fear, but the one thing about that I think let's say we fear, is that a person will take advantage of that, knowing, well, I can do this to them, and they have to forgive me. And that should never be a person's attitude. That's really a wrong attitude that I think God will look at and eventually judge too. You can't be that way. You can't do something knowing, well, if you want to go to heaven, you got to forgive me. Well, that's pretty arrogant, you know?
It's free will, isn't it?
Yeah. You have to choose. You have to choose to do it.
Let me ask you this. Where does it go from here? We've talked about how you got here and how you've now changed things. And so I'll call them phases. What's the next phase?
I feel like I was adjusting a camera in our old prayer studio at OCI, just standing there, and I heard this so clear. Revival will come through the lens of a camera. I did not know what it meant. This is a year and a half before Corona hit. Well, when Corona hit, everybody had to go to the internet. And then audiences started getting built up huge because of the internet. Then YouTube got popular. And I mean, we have like 100,000 views on a thing we posted 24 hours ago, which that's big. I mean, it's not big with some people, but for us, it's huge. And I realized that the camera lens, whether it's the lens of a iPhone, or the lens of a television camera, will be how people are going to be reached. Now, here's the twist. We get a call from a man in Pakistan. He's a minister with massive crowds. He said, we watch Perry on TV. I want to set up screens in a village that's never heard the gospel, and I want him to preach from there on screen. We're setting up at ISO. He's got to do it tomorrow to set up a Skype at 9:30 in the morning. It'll be the time they're going there, and I'll be preaching in Pakistan from here through the lens of a camera. And now we're contacting India, South Africa, so I can stay at home.
You're doing it again.
Yes. Well, no, but watch this. I don't have to get in a plane. I don't have to wait in the airport. I don't have to get a hotel, take a taxi, and wear my body out.
Yeah.
I can go, get the word, preach, and go home, eat lunch with my family, go to sleep in my bed, and still reach millions of people. I think that's where it's going for me. Now, there'll be a time that I will go to nations because I heard a word years ago. There'll be time. I've actually been invited to some crazy places. I want to go to where the guy that Schmolik knows from Taiwan. No, not Taiwan. Joseph Prince. Charlie, you're like me. This is getting bad. When Charlie's memory goes, I'm gonna be in deep trouble.
You're gonna have to hire a third person.
He pastors this great church, not Taiwan, not Hong Kong, Singapore. Singapore, one of the greatest cities. And my wife said, "You go to Singapore, I'm going to Singapore," because it's the most beautiful city in the world. But they tell me that my audience there is massive, that our books are the best-selling books there, and so I've never gone. And these are people that want to hear you preach. They want to bring their family. People can come to know the Lord. So Ireland, I've been invited to Ireland. I've been invited to New Zealand. I've been invited to Australia. Never taken it. Do you know why I've never taken it? I was too busy here. I was too busy every weekend. And when I gave up the OCI to the ramp, they became responsible for all the expenses in that building and their staff. Dr. Cutshaw is responsible for the expenses of his staff and the building. And it relieved me of an enormous amount of financial stress. And so it's not just about not having to deal with all of that and not having to teach here and study here and preach here and pray there. It's getting readjusted, realigned to be more effective to more people. And
because you've already laid the groundwork for those things.
Totally. So social media, we're going to really push it. I'll preach more on Sundays, Wednesdays. I will do some conferences here in town next year. We will do a few. Probably as when Corona stops, we'll go to a few churches and do some.
Will you lay out a lesson, or will you just wing it?
Are you talking about when I'm preaching?
Yeah.
Oh, I always try to get a word and pre-plan what I'm going to say. But
an hour.
But everybody tells me that's ever been a part of my ministry. They said, Perry, you do much better when you forget the outline.
You don't carry any notes, I've noticed.
Oh yeah, no, I do normally.
Well, you hide them well.
Yeah. Well, sometimes though I'll just have a thought. And trust me, this is scary. This is like you building a building with half the plans.
Yeah, that's common.
This is like you laying the foundation. No, you laying the foundation. You don't have anything. You don't know where. You just say, okay, we're gonna shoot from the hip. It's different. But sometimes you get a download while you're speaking, and it comes out much more effective than you just looking at what you have prepared.
So the future is more internet based.
More social media, more internet, more through a camera, and I do know that, I feel like I don't want to. I've enjoyed time with my wife, kids, and grandbabies so much that I don't want to push myself. And really, Corona, I can't go anywhere.
Can't go anywhere anyway.
So this is a great time for me. It's a bad time for everybody, but it's a good time traveling-wise. I don't want to ever go back to the busyness. So what I've learned to do, like the other day, I was working on an outline. And I said, you know what? I'm hitting a little thing. I'm hitting a little fog. Normally, I would push through. I'd stay there another 3 hours. I shut off my laptop, closed it, went away. And that's what I've learned to do. So hopefully, I'll always be able to do that, still do what I'm doing, still reach the number of people we're reaching. Because the thing is this. I absolutely know from a kid, the Lord called me to preach from my mother's belly. Just like, I'm not a prophet like Jeremiah, don't get me wrong, but Jeremiah 1, I think it's 5, before I knew you and formed you in the womb, I knew you and called you to be a prophet. Well, he called me just to be a minister, probably a prophetic, not a prophet, prophetic teacher on Bible prophecy. If you humble yourself, this is the key, anyone that will ever go through these type of things is humble yourself. I always taught my kids to keep a repentant heart and repentant spirit, always know when to say I was wrong. And say it. And then stay humble before God. Because people often equate boldness with arrogance. And it's two different things. Yeah. You can be bold and say, boy, he sure is arrogant. No, arrogance is when you're bragging on yourself like you're the best thing going. That's arrogance. Boldness is when you present truth with power.
Right.
That's boldness. And so people will always judge and misjudge you. They will judge you on what they hear. The funny thing about Cleveland, I can say this, The people that are out there who don't like me have never been in my service.
I don't know anybody that doesn't like you.
Now that's a big statement.
You don't realize that. But
that's the first time. That's the first time I've ever heard that.
You don't see the. You may not see the forest for the trees, but you are absolutely the most famous person in Cleveland, Tennessee. And your passion for what you're trying to do is obvious.
Well, I think the community knows me well enough to know I am not perfect. I make mistakes. But excuse me, I love this town. I have pushed this town. There's been hundreds of families move here because of our ministry.
I've got a person that runs one of my houses. They moved here because of Perry Stone. And I'm thinking,
well, the conferences, they love the conferences. They love now the ramp. 7 conferences a year. Our conference is 3 more, 10 conferences. That thousands of people are going to be here.
And they love Perry Stone. Believe me.
Well, that means a lot.
I'm telling you, that's what they love.
Thank you. Wait, I love you, man. Thank you, brother. You too. I appreciate that. That means a lot. And God bless everybody.